Americans cast early or mail-in ballots, according to the data from the University of Florida. Now, throughout the day, both candidates made final campaign stops in Pennsylvania, the largest of the key battleground states. 19 electoral votes, remember, ladies and gentlemen. An easy win for anyone who, in fact, bags all these 19 to reach the magical number of 270 that will be needed to claim victory. In New Hampshire, the small town of Dixville Notch, maintaining its tradition of casting the first votes at midnight, saw its 6 voters split evenly between Trump and Harris, symbolic of the close nature of this national race. We have been calling it a close contest since day one of Harris, in fact, having joined this race, replacing the sitting president, Joe Biden, from the Democratic side. Georgia has been under close watch as well. Officials in the Gwinnett County reported brief disruptions from a hoax bomb threat, though polling quickly resumed. Now, earlier today in Florida, Donald Trump cast his own ballot in Palm Beach, telling reporters he's confident about his campaign and will respect the results of a fair election. Still, he hinted at potentially declaring victory tonight, as he did in 2020, and reiterated concerns over potential voter fraud.
I don't have to tell them that. I don't have to tell them that there'll be no violence. Of course there'll be no violence. My supporters are not violent people. I don't have to tell them that. And I certainly don't want any violence, but I certainly don't have to tell. These are great people. I'm not a Democrat. I'm able to make a speech on pretty quick notice. If I win, I know what I'm going to say, and I don't even want to think about the losing part. I would like to tell all of the people that are online to stay online. We have tremendous Republican lines, and I've been asked actually to say it. It takes a while. I'd like to just make the statement that I'd like the Republicans to stay online. Democrats, if they'd like, they can leave.
Regardless of what happens tonight, is this your last campaign? Are you done after this?
Yeah, I would think so. I would think so.
How do you feel about it?
Sad and very fulfilled. I think we're going to have a very big victory today.
Meanwhile, Kamala Harris visited the Democratic National Committee headquarters in Washington, D.C., rallying her base as the day's voting continued. Voters in Michigan have turned out in strong numbers, with Grand Rapids polling sites reporting steady lines. With over 3 million ballots already having been cast, Michigan, along with Pennsylvania and Arizona, remains one of the 7 battleground states that could ultimately determine the next president of the United States of America. Whether it will be America is to be great again, or we will not go back. Which side is America leaning on to? Well, we are consistently tracking the numbers which are on your screens. Harris stands at 27, while Trump with an early lead of 99. Remember, the magic number is 270. To win, that is the majority, whichever side hits it first. With that, ladies and gentlemen, let's take you through some of the key poll issues that have been at the center stage of this very American elections. Very firstly, if we look at Kamala Harris's side, first up, the subtext is economic. Both sides have brought in their promises to the table with regards to what do they have to offer for the people. Well, Kamala Harris has said that she's pledged to cut taxes for middle and low income families, higher taxes for high-income earners, tariffs and export controls to boost domestic competitiveness. On the other side, Donald Trump, in fact, who is a businessman out and out and a politician later, we would say, has pledged to cut corporate tax rate for companies making products in the US, exempt social security benefits from income taxes, blanket tariffs at 10% to 20% on virtually all imports. This is one of the key particular election issue that has been at the center stage. Next up, we take you to the abortion policies. That, in fact, ladies and gentlemen, very interestingly, is a topic that has, in fact, brought the youth voters out to come out. It has encouraged the youth voters to come out and cast their vote. Kamala Harris has been extremely vocal about abortion policies. She has been a vocal proponent of reproductive rights, called upon the Congress to restore protection of Roe v. Wade, pledged to protect access to contraception and IVF. On the other hand, Donald Trump has said that abortion access should be left to the states. He's vowed not to sign a national abortion ban. Next up, we see border security and immigration, another extremely key topic, crucial topic for this election that we have seen, wherein we go to Kamala Harris, who has called for a comprehensive immigration reform, pathways to citizenship for undocumented people, citizenship for those brought to the US as children. Donald Trump, on the other side, has promised to carry out what he has called the largest domestic deportation operation in the US history. The details of which he has still been giving into one by one in one of the campaigns, but that has largely been his campaign. The largest domestic deportation, that is what he's labeled most of his campaigns after. He's vowed to resign programs that shield undocumented people's deportation, suggested ending birthright citizenship for US-born children of undocumented people. Other part is foreign policy. How will the geopolitics around the world be affected with each of these candidates bringing in their promises and pledges to the table? Kamala Harris, on her side, who is in fact currently the vice president, has put emphasis on maintaining US's global alliances, especially NATO. And this, ladies and gentlemen, remember, comes in at a time when we see two major wars waging on. One between Russia and Ukraine, the other is the conflict in West Asia that continues since 7th of October 2023. Donald Trump, on the other hand, has advocated for a more isolationist policy and seen as a skeptic of the global alliances. The other point that, in fact, I would also like to bring to your notice, ladies and gentlemen, is democracy has been considered to be a major poll issue this time. How so? Well, a lot of polling sites have in fact come out to say this, that people who have gone to cast their votes to these polling stations have come out to say that democracy is one of the major issues that has played in their minds when they have cast their votes. Because a lot of them believe, or have been made to believe, that democracy in the United States is under danger. Let's take a look at some of the responses that have come in from the grounds to see what the people have to say.
We're excited about Pennsylvania. I think being here, we started it here. For me, it feels like closing the loop. We're excited about being here. We're taking that positive message, and you saw the energy in that room. But I want to remind folks, we have the freest, most secure elections. It's going to take some time to get results. We're going to go up, down, but at the end of the day, as we always do, we will get the results that we know are accurate, and at that point in time, the winner will be announced, and the loser will shake hands and work for the winner. We got time for a couple more. Trump, we're going to turn the page here, so thank you all. Grateful.
I, of course, voted for Donald Trump and myself. So did my wife. Look, I feel good. You never know until you know, but I feel good about this race. I felt good about my own race a couple of years ago when I voted in this exact same spot. Hopefully it goes as well for President Trump and me as it went for me a couple of years ago in the state of Ohio. So, well, look, I think our message is, first of all, we do expect to win, but obviously no matter who wins, half the country, as you said, is going to be at least partially disappointed. I think my attitude is the best way to heal the rift in the country is to try to govern the country as well as we can, create as much prosperity as we can for the American people, and remind our fellow Americans that we are all fundamentally on the same team however we voted. I certainly hope you vote for Donald J. Trump today. I think that his policies are going to promote peace and prosperity for our citizens. But if you vote the wrong way, in my view, I'm still going to love you. I'm still going to treat you as a fellow citizen. And if I am lucky enough to be your vice president, I'm going to fight hard for your dreams and for your family over the next 4 years.
With that, ladies and gentlemen, let's take your focus now to what we are considering as the make or break of this elections. In fact, that is what the make or break is always in the American elections, which is the swing states. Let's take you through how the swing states have performed, in fact, since over the years. Let's first start with Nevada, wherein the poll predictions have suggested 46% for Trump, while 49% for Kamala Harris, inclining towards the Democratic side, so what we can call as a blue state for that matter. Next up, we see North Carolina, wherein again Kamala Harris leads by 2%. 46% for Donald Trump, 48% for Kamala Harris. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, if we are to take you through some of the comparison of results that's been brought into us from 2020, if we see Wisconsin for a matter, in 2016, Trump had narrowly won Wisconsin by 0.77%, marking a significant shift as the state had supported Democrats since the year 1988. However, in 2020, Biden won by a slim margin of 0.63%. Again, Michigan, Trump's 2016 victory in Michigan was quite a razor-thin victory with a margin of 0.23%. However, in 2020, Biden reclaimed the state with a larger margin of 2.78%. Key difference was the resurgence of the Democratic support in the Detroit and a stronger appeal to suburban voters concerned with Trump's way of handling issues during the COVID-19 pandemic as well as racial tensions. Pennsylvania, the biggest swing state, 19 electoral votes, remember, ladies and gentlemen, saw a similar pattern wherein Trump's 2016 margin was 0.72%. Biden flipped the state in 2020 with a margin of 1.16%, which is something we are awaiting this year as well. Will Kamala Harris be able to continue this particular trend, be able to continue to hold on to Pennsylvania, or shall it go back to being a red state like it was? Again, the particular graph that you see on your screens, ladies and gentlemen, is a graph that we bring to you from the year 1992, 32 years back. Race to the White House, how many states swing? Again, 22 states we had seen in 1992. 1996, it had dropped down to 5, while in 2000 again, it went up to 11. 2004, we had seen 3. 2008, we had seen 9. 2012, we had seen 2. 2016, we had seen 6. While 2020, we had seen 5. And this year, ladies and gentlemen, the swing states stand at the number 7. If I'm quickly to take you through which are these states, it's Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Now let's focus on the candidates. They are, after all, the superstars, if we may call them, in this given election. All the spotlight being on these two candidates. We'll begin with former president and the Republican candidate, Donald Trump. In what he said was his last ever rally of his political career, U.S. Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump on Tuesday compared himself to historical political figures like Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, and Winston Churchill. Republicans have often raised the great emancipator's name and compared himself or others to him, and he's been treated worse than Lincoln. He's done more for blacks than anyone since Lincoln, and so on and so forth. It has become a recurring refrain in Trump's unique brand of oratory. This is something we've seen, a rhetoric that he keeps going back to. Let's in fact listen in to what's been said by him on Tuesday.
By the way, the Border Patrol 2 weeks ago gave us the strongest endorsement you've ever heard. They said he's the greatest president in history and the best president on the border by a factor of 10. And I said to them, does that mean I'm better than Abraham Lincoln and George? What? Yes, sir, you're better than both of them. No, when Winston Churchill, who's a great speaker, he was actually a stutterer. a tremendous stutterer, and he became one of the greatest orators. But when Winston Churchill made a mistake, he didn't go, excuse me, and go back. He just blazed through it. But if I do it, they say, he's cognitively impaired. There's something wrong with him. These people are sick. Those people, look at them.
Well, that is what the former president has said as we count the final hours before determining who is it going to be, Donald Trump or Kamala Harris. Ladies and gentlemen, we are keeping a track of all of this right here on News9. But right now, we have to slip into a short break. Do stay tuned as we bring you more from the battlegrounds as the final countdown continues to determining who shall the next president of the United States of America be.
Are we ready to win?
This one is a total stiff. You can't have her as your president.
The consequences of him ever being president again are brutally serious. Brutally serious.
You're a vice president. We will make America great again. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?
We are not going back. We're not going back.
The next Indian icons, beating everyone on the globe, B6E and XEV9E. Mahindra's electric origin SUVs. Catch them at Unlimit India.
Why is the state not looking at putting an embargo on that?
As a Telangana person, I will not accept.
How do ordinary folks deal with this?
How do you fulfill that promise? Because ultimately expectations have to be met. If you look at the political landscape, is it really changing for women? And what is the inability of the forces that dead bodies surface, but not the living people?
The next Indian icons, beating everyone on the globe, B6E and XEV9E. Mahindra's electric origin SUVs. Catch them at Unlimit India.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching News 9 and I'm Striya Kundu here with all the latest updates as we speak of the final countdown to determine who will be the next president of one of the world's largest democracies. Let's get right into the stories that now are developing from the battlegrounds. In fact, one such state that we have in fact noticed a story coming in from, Georgia. It's a swing state. There's a concerning story that's in fact come in from there. Let's take you right into this particular story in the very top of this segment. The closure of a polling station in the U.S. swing state of Georgia after a hoax bomb scare caused a minor disruption. At least 2 polling sites in the neighboring Fulton County were also targeted after a threat that the election officials in the state blamed on Russian agents. In a statement, the FBI has said that it was aware of a non-credible bomb threat to polling locations in several states, with many of them originating from a Russian email, in fact, several Russian email domains. Officials say the threats were sent to the U.S. media and the 2 polling locations. Phony bomb threats mark the latest in a string of examples of alleged interference by the Russians in the 2024 election. Polling has in fact concluded in Georgia, is what the update is so far. Let's take a look at some of the responses that are coming in from the state.
We've heard some threats that were of Russian origin, and so I don't know how to describe if that's viable. We don't think they are, but in the interest of public safety, you always check that out, and we'll just continue to be very responsive when we hear about stuff like that. We identified the source, and it was from Russia.
Can you elaborate on that? What kind of threats?
As he said, it's a bomb threat. Just like we had the DDoS attack on Monday, October 14th, 420,000, pings, denial of service from Russians. So we added that interface that said, I am a human, I'm not a robot. So they're up to mischief, it seems, and they don't want us to have a smooth, fair, and accurate election, and anything they can get us to fight among ourselves, they can count that as a victory. So that tells you a little bit about the Russians. They're not our friends. Anyone that thinks they are hasn't been reading the newspapers. So far, we're tracking line times. Average line time in Georgia right now is 2 minutes. And then with the electronic poll pads, average check-in is 49 seconds. When I checked in, it was actually under 49 seconds. It was actually about 47 on early voting. And I did want to share that because you probably thought I got special treatment. But today, it's 49 seconds for everyone in Georgia. Well, we will have, with SB 189, all of this early voting, so that's over 4 million ballots that were cast early and the absentees that were accepted. All of that has to be uploaded and reported no later than 1 hour after the polls close. Most polls will be closing at 7 p.m., so by 8 p.m. you'll have probably 99% of all that. So that'll be uploaded. So you get a good idea of what the race looks like.
With that, ladies and gentlemen, let's bring you another story that's now in fact coming in, wherein a caravan of around 3,000 migrants began its journey November 5th from the southern Mexico, heading towards the United States on the same day U.S. voters were casting their ballots in the presidential election between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Now, immigration has been a central issue, like we were mentioning only a few minutes back, with regards to this very election, with both sides, Kamala Harris as well as Donald Trump, bringing in their own promises with regards to this massive issue that's now been plaguing the United States of America throughout their campaign. And this new caravan underscores the ongoing challenges at the US-Mexico border. It's the biggest example, in fact, almost an irony, if we may say so at this given point, with both of these candidates having made promises when we see such a caravan making its way towards the U.S. from South Mexico. The migrants who in fact gathered in Tapachula, Chiapas, held banners with messages such as "No more migrant blood." Tapachula, a key crossing point, has in fact recently become one of Mexico's most dangerous cities, with migrants often being targeted by organized crime. In the past, caravans like this one have attempted to reach the US border, but many have dispersed along the way as they have faced significant risks and obstacles on the way. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, when we speak of the ballot issues and what has been promised by both Trump and Harris on the other side, immigration is one such major policy that they have promised. And as we were just bringing to you, Donald Trump has come out to say that he will be conducting the largest deportation program that they have seen, that in fact America has ever seen. That is the particular promise that they have, that Donald Trump has in fact brought in his campaign. With that, let's also take you to Philadelphia now. Philadelphia officials refuted Donald Trump's claims of voter fraud in the city after the former president posted on social media website Truth Social that there was a massive cheating that's taken place in the city. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, there were already rumors doing the rounds with regards to the Republicans trying to lay a groundwork right before November 5th, the D-Day in America, with regards to calling election fraud if Donald Trump sees himself on the losing end. There is no cheating, however. There is no smoke to it. That is what's been said by the Philadelphia City Commissioner, Omar Sabir. I mean, this playbook has been played since 2020. That is what's been said by him. Philadelphia City Commissioner Seth Bluestein has said that he had been in touch with the Republican National Committee and that they would look into any specific allegation that was brought forward.
Philadelphia elections are safe, simple, and secure, as they have always been. There is no cheating, there's no smoke to it. People say things, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. We've learned this in 2020. We have hard-working people trying to give the citizens of America the election that they deserve.
When you know any specifics of the allegation? What do you want to say to Donald Trump right now?
I don't want to say anything, Donald Trump. The only thing I want to say is us, citizens of Philadelphia, you're going to get the election that you deserve, and you have always been having accurate results and honesty. And we have great citizens here working to do their job.
Do you have any specifics of the allegations?
I mean, I saw something on social media. I mean, I saw it said something about it was cheating and all that kind of stuff. Again, that's not nothing new. I mean, this playbook has been played since 2020. We saw it, and we're going to do our job to give the citizens and give America the election that they deserve.
There is no truth to the allegation that there is mass cheating in Philadelphia. We have been in touch with the RNC and anybody who has any complaints throughout the day. We've been responsive. Everything has been handled appropriately. And as we've done all day, if there are any specific allegations that would like to be brought to our attention, we'll be happy to look into them, and we'll make sure that we are as responsive as we can be. But until we see anything specific, there's nothing.
With that, ladies and gentlemen, let's also take a look at this particular psychological angle, or rather aspect, that we are bringing to you with regards to the American elections. Many Americans report feeling stress and anxiety related to the heated presidential race. An American Psychological Association poll taken earlier this year found that 65% of US adults always or often felt exhausted by politics, and 55% always or often felt angry. Why so? Let's take you through this report, which analyzes this very psychological aspect of it.
Feeling stressed about the election? You're not alone. An American Psychological Association poll taken earlier this year found that 65% of U.S. adults felt exhausted by politics, while 55% felt angry.
You hear so much on both sides nonstop, like it's the end of democracy.
Two different characters, outlook on life. It's just a crazy world.
He is only focused on himself.
She's a low IQ individual.
This is therapist Laura Goldstein.
It's stress, it's anxiety, it's fear, it can sometimes be anger or outrage.
She says the election has increasingly come up during client sessions.
I think one of the other big things that we're seeing a lot of is people struggling to connect because it doesn't always feel safe to talk about. You don't know what environments are a safe environment to have political conversations or to discharge some of the stress.
Carrie Jarvie is a mental health counselor.
Yeah, if someone's experiencing stress leading up to this election cycle, it starts with reflecting on what is my level of media consumption. Has it reached the point where it's not helpful anymore?
He says people suffering from election anxiety should seek activities that decrease interaction from the media.
What are the things that make you feel like yourself?
Like surfing or going on a trail.
Election-wise, yeah, no one talks election.
This is a good release to be out in nature.
In fact, ladies and gentlemen, as we speak of the American elections, we would like to take you through the detailed campaign promises that has been made by both Kamala Harris on one side and Donald Trump on the other. Let's in fact start with the focus on Trump's promises being on ending the Ukraine war right before Inauguration Day. Well, that is what he had said, wherein he had promised to end Russia's war on Ukraine before he's inaugurated, that is before he enters in, or rather officially joins in as the president. Well, before, ladies and gentlemen, we continue, let me also take your focus to the numbers we are flashing on our screens with regards to how the states have been swinging. Well, 154 Trump is what we see, ladies and gentlemen, while Kamala Harris still continues to stay in double digits, and that too quite a low one of 27. Remember, poll surveys over the last 3 months, ever since Kamala Harris had come in to this very election race, had been showing the Democrats catching up. In fact, right after the CNN debate that was seen between Joe Biden and Trump, we had seen that Trump was leading. However, Kamala Harris entering this race had changed the picture quite massively. It was seen that Harris was in fact quickly catching up, and not just catching up, in several states even taking the lead with her poll promises, with her abortion rights, vocal abortion right promises. But the situation on the grounds, or at least from what the polls are being called as, we see 154 seats in fact going to Trump so far. This is the early trends that we are still bringing to you, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, let's go back to the policies as we were discussing. Trump again having said that he will carry out the largest mass deportation in US history. As we were just mentioning, a caravan in fact coming in from South Mexico in fact puts this point rather to a little bit of a mockery, if we may call it, an irony of sorts, if we may see it, on the eve of the result day. At this given point, it is the result day, but yes, it's still too early to call the elections at this very given point. Again, when we speak of promises, Trump has been extremely clear with regards to how and what he brings to the economy of US, as to how he will bring in economic reforms. What does he have to bring to the table? Trump had said that he'd cut federal fundings for schools that teach critical race theory and transgender matters, which he calls transgender insanity. When I speak of transgender insanity, ladies and gentlemen, let's also remind you that there were these posters doing the rounds that had been set up by the Republican sides, which were mocking Kamala Harris about bringing in, Kamala Harris promising to bring in transgender rights, or rather funds for transgender inmates, to which we had seen the public in fact have very mixed reviews, while the youth, or rather the transgender community, the LGBTQIA community, in fact felt recognized for the first time during US elections, because transgender rights, remember ladies and gentlemen, has never taken any mention or taken any space up in these election campaigns. It's never been a polling issue as such, but this is probably the first time we've seen transgender rights also making its headway within the campaign, for which in fact most of these members of the queer community had come out to say that yes, they feel good to have been recognized, and they in fact will be siding with Kamala Harris. However, a lot of the Republican states with Republican supporters had come out to say that this is complete insanity. They still look at the LGBTQIA community with a sense of outsiderness. They do not give them any sort of a welcome. There is no inclusivity in their society with regards to those people. In fact, they are looked at as outsiders who have no space in society, and they are suffering from some sort of an insanity. That is the particular focus of Trump's campaign, if we may say so. On the other side, if we talk about Harris's campaign was mostly vocal about abortion rights and what she will be doing for abortion rights in the US after winning the US elections, that is. Well, these were some of the excerpts we were bringing in from the campaigns as to how the campaigns have been. We have in fact been discussing this with panels of experts for the longest time now, right in the run up to this very day. But however, this is the particular election campaign that we are tracking. However, right now we are slipping into a short break. Do stay tuned to News9 as we come back with more polling issues and more voting updates from the battlegrounds in the United States of America.
Are we ready to vote? Are we ready to win?
This one is a total stiff. You can't have her as your president.
The consequences of him ever being president again are brutally serious. Brutally serious.
You're a vice president. We will make America great again. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?
We are not going back. We're not going back.
Indian Americans are redefining success in every field. However, Indian Americans haven't historically been a political force in US elections. But the 2024 race could mark a turning point for one of the fastest growing immigrant groups in the country. Ever since Kamala Harris, the daughter of an Indian mother, unexpectedly rose to become the 2024 Democratic nominee, Indian American communities say they've seen a groundswell of support and energy for this election. Elections are won on the margin, and Indian Americans can be that margin of victory. This is the Indian American vote.
How do you fulfill that promise? Because ultimately expectations have to be met. If you look at the political landscape, is it really changing for women? And what is the inability of the forces that dead bodies surface but not the living people?
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching News 9, and at the very top of this segment, we continue to keep tracking the United States of America's presidential elections. It is the final countdown that we're tracking here, ladies and gentlemen, and bringing you all the latest updates and stories that are coming in from the United States at this very point. It is early morning here, and we bring you all the latest stories. Let's also, however, while we bring you all the stories, let's also take you through some insights that is to be brought in by our experts who are joining us. In fact, right now on the bulletin, I am being joined by Swati Joshi, political activist and leader, TSB National Board and RISE AAPI Board. And she is, in fact, joining us from Texas. Very good evening to you. It is evening there, we know. Ms. Joshi, thank you so much for joining us at News 9. An exciting day for not just the United States of America, I would say, in fact, for the whole world, having had their eyes pinned on this very date with regards to who shall take up the presidential seat next. Right now, from the early trends, Ms. Joshi, what would you have to say? What would you say it is something we were expecting? However, might I remind our viewers, we had been seeing Kamala Harris, in fact, leading in most of the poll surveys, or rather a close contest between the two. However, the numbers right now show a stark difference from what their polls had been suggesting so far.
Yeah, no, and I don't see anything that's absolutely unexpected at all. It's called a mirage. So currently all the red states are coming in with their results, and a lot of the Democratic votes are more focused or more centered in urban cities, and it takes longer for those to be counted. So I'm not fearing anything. I'm not, concerned at all. This is how we've expected it to go. The results will come in slowly over tonight, tomorrow, and it may take, even till Thursday or later to get the results. But we'll see some trends in the next day or so, and the votes for Harris will, continue to rise as they complete the counting of the votes in the urban areas.
Right, Ms. Joshi, at this point, the results, or rather the map that we see of the United States of America, the poll trends that are showing at this given point, would you say that, the urban population at this given point is showing trends wherein they are going for Kamala Harris, while it is probably the rural sides which are still sticking to Trump?
Yeah, 100%. That's how it works. It seems anyway. The urban areas, the bigger cities, are where the Democrats generally live, and you'll see those. Those become blue. Blue means Democrat, red means Republican, and so those are still being counted. And I know they've already called some of the states, which is typical again of this election, any election cycle. We're not and I want to reiterate that there is nothing odd about this and nothing that I'm concerned about at this point.
Right. So, there's an interesting insight that's coming out from the polling stations where the polling officers have had to say that democracy, while we have seen economy and abortion take the center stage, even immigration policy is taking the center stage in this election. However, during the voting, we saw that most people who would come to cast their ballots seem to be saying that democracy stands as the key issue. Why would you say that? Why would you think so? Why would people be saying that, given that they've been thinking that democracy is under threat in the United States of America? Why such a mentality?
Yeah, we are all feeling that threat. Well, at least I would say we, the Democrats, are feeling that threat. And that's because of Donald Trump. I mean, he is unlike any candidate that has run in the past, and that it's not in a good way either. Lots of people want change and things to be different. People are, look forward to maybe what's out there, but Trump's agenda is not the way this country was formed. It does not comply with the Constitution. He wants to. His motives are very selfish and self-fulfilling, like what he wants for himself. He does not care about this country. And that's why people are saying that democracy is under threat. And another reason is because he has made it clear that he's going to change a lot of things in this country that will go against what most of the Americans want. So he wants to destroy the Constitution. That is our piece of paper that kind of rules this country, and he doesn't care about it. He wants to take back things that have already been in place for many years. For example, abortion rights, health care for women, basically. And he's already done that during his administration. And he's, continuing to push that forward. So those are one of the unalienable rights that we have, that women have fought for many years, and he's pushed that back, and so now we're fighting for it again. Things that I was, took for granted for my health care now are being threatened for my daughter. So it is a threat to our democracy. It's a threat to our lives. It's a threat to the way that we've been living in this country. And I can say many more things, for example, immigration, and rights we just saw a commercial or some news about LGBTQ rights. We've come so far in this country, and yet he's threatening all of these things for his own motives, for his own goals. And his goals are very selfish, and it's all about him. And Kamala Harris, in contrast, 180 degrees different. She wants what's good for this country and what's good for our democracy.
You know, Ms. Joshi, I'll want to bring in a particular point here. This is from an article that we have, in fact, with regards to exit polls that have been surveyed by different platforms. They had said that at least 73% of voters believed that democracy was in jeopardy, against just 25% who said that it was secured. Now, 44% of these voters viewed Republican candidate Donald Trump favorably. However, and this is compared to 46% in the 2020 exit polls. However, if we compare it with 2024, Democrat Kamala Harris was viewed favorably by 48% of the respondents, compared with Biden's 52%. So somewhere that number seems to have come down. Why do you think that is? If from what you just said, that people actually believe in Kamala Harris when we speak of democracy more than Donald Trump.
Yeah, I mean, so Kamala, as a vice president, and this is typical of all vice presidents, they're not in the limelight, so to speak, as the president is. So things that she has done are not notable or not seen by the general public, and so they don't know her. And so she just became the candidate in end of June, July time frame, and so people don't know her as well. And so that's one of the things that she had to overcome. And I think she's done a beautiful job of trying to overcome that one aspect of her candidacy. But it's still, Donald Trump started campaigning almost 2 years ago, whereas she has been campaigning for 6 months. And so it's probably not enough time for everyone to get to know her, but she's done a really good job of trying to accomplish that. And secondly, and I hate to say it, but I think it's true in some small cases, it's because we've never had a woman president in this country. And she's our first woman vice president. And now she's trying to become our first woman president. And there is some level of, misogyny, if you want to call it that, where women aren't, they just don't, not everyone thinks that women can do this job. But I think India has proven it many, many years ago in the 70s, right? Indira Gandhi, lots of women leaders around the world, and they've proven themselves. I think it's time for America to have a woman as a president. So it's just, those couple of things that I think are kind of holding things, dropping that percentage a little bit.
Absolutely, Ms. Joshi. Thank you so much for bringing us those interesting insights into what exactly is happening so far and is probably about to happen in the upcoming hours. I don't think we need to call it days anymore, if all goes right, that is, in the United States of America, as we see the counting having already begun. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, before we end this bulletin and move on with the rest, let's also bring to you this ground report, wherein a look at the role of the Electoral College. Electoral College is a very unique concept that we see in the United States of America's election process, and it helps in determining the winner of the 2024 US presidential election. How, what exactly is its role and impact in this entire election process? This particular ground report brings all that and more, and we end the bulletin with this very report.
You got to get out and vote.
The U.S. presidential election will come down to who wins the Electoral College, not who finishes first in the popular vote. Here's a rundown of how it works. When voters cast ballots for a presidential and vice presidential candidate, they are actually voting for a group or slate of electors. Each state in the U.S. is apportioned a certain number of electors. Nathaniel Burkhead is a professor of political science at Kansas State University.
The way that it works is rather than having a national popular vote, each state has a given set of electors, and the majority of the candidate who gets the majority in that state will then have those electors meet in what we call a college to actually formally cast a vote for president.
Electors are typically party loyalists who pledge to support the candidate who gets the most votes in their state. Each elector represents one vote in the Electoral College. Nationally, there are a total of 538 electors who make up the Electoral College, and a candidate needs the support of 270 to win the White House. Congress officially counts the votes after all 50 states have made their selections. This will happen on December 17th this year.
The votes for President of the United States are as follows. Joseph R. Biden, Jr. of the state of Delaware has received 306 votes. Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received 232 votes.
The system mandated by the U.S. Constitution was a compromise between the nation's founders, who debated whether the president should be picked by Congress or through a popular vote. The number of electors that each state receives is based on the number of representatives it has in Congress, which is based on the size of its population. Wyoming is the least populous state, and California is the most.
So Wyoming has one member of the House of Representatives and 2 senators. That means that they've got 3 Electoral College votes. By contrast, California, which is very populous, has, I believe, 52 representatives and then 2 senators, so they have 54 Electoral College votes.
Winning a state by a large margin is the same as winning by 1 vote, so campaigns tend to focus on states where a small shift can deliver all of its electoral votes. In 2000, Republican George W. Bush won the presidency but lost the popular vote. In 2016, Republican Donald Trump did the same, sparking calls for reforms to the winner-take-all system of electoral college votes in all but 2 U.S. states. Congress tried to repair flaws that were exposed after the 2020 election, when Trump falsely claimed he won and protesters stormed the Capitol seeking to overturn the result. In 2022, Congress passed the Electoral Count Reform Act to clarify that each state's governor or other official chosen by the state will certify the state's election results before they are delivered to Congress. Abolishing the Electoral College would require a constitutional amendment.
Opportunity in this election to turn the page on a decade of Donald Trump.
You say Harris, nobody knows who the heck we're talking about, right?
Democracy's biggest stage.
What are the key issues dominating the U.S. presidential polls? I'm Hamza Kambazai, coming to you with all the updates from Washington, D.C.
Take a look at what happened.
A grand presidential contest.
I'm Ujjwal, and I shall get you minute-by-minute updates on the shifting voters' mood in the U.S. presidential elections.
News9 captures the moment.
We'll tell you how the verdict will impact you and the global economy.
Washington, D.C., New York, Texas, Atlanta, Detroit. Ground reports and analysis.
For live updates, please stay tuned to News9.
Stay live with News9.
Why is the state not looking at putting an embargo on that?
As a Telangana person, I will not accept.
How do ordinary folks deal with this?
Are we ready to vote? Are we ready to win?
This one is a total stiff. You can't have her as your president.
The consequences of him ever being president again are brutally serious. Brutally serious.
You're a vice president. We will make America great again. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?
We are not going back. We're not going back. We're not going back.
Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching News 9 and I'm Shreya Kundu here today to bring you all the latest updates from the United States of America as we consistently track the final countdown to who will be the 60th, in fact, in the 60th United States presidential poll, who will be the 50th vice president and the 47th president for that matter. We will bring you all of this and what exactly is going on the grounds there. But right now, let's take a look at how things have been developing. On your screens, we are consistently flashing the numbers, wherein we see 99 for Kamala Harris and 178 for Trump. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, as we were just telling you, the contest is for the 60th time the presidential election taking place in the United States of America, for the 47th president and the 50th vice president. Tight race between Kamala Harris on the Democratic side, while Donald Trump once again represents the Republican side. Tim Walz and J.D. Vance both eyeing for the vice presidentship. The results, in fact, are rolling in, and early returns show a deadlocked contest between former President Donald Trump, Vice President Kamala Harris. In the first batch of results, Donald Trump has claimed Kentucky, securing 8 electoral votes, continuing a Republican streak that has been unbroken since 1996. West Virginia also goes red with Trump winning. He has now, in fact, added Oklahoma, Tennessee, Missouri, Alabama and Florida to his tally. On the Democratic side, Kamala Harris has secured Vermont, bringing in 3 electoral votes as expected from the reliably blue state. Harris claims victories in Maryland and Massachusetts, further solidifying her lead in these traditional Democratic strongholds. In Indiana, Trump captured 11 electoral votes, continuing his dominance in this historically conservative state. He has now won Indiana in all 3 of his presidential runs, with Republicans holding the governor's office there for the past 2 decades. Vice President Kamala Harris has extended her lead with a win in Connecticut, securing 7 more electoral votes, as well as Rhode Island, another Democratic stronghold. Meanwhile, Trump continued his winning streak, claiming Texas for the 3rd consecutive election, adding a significant 40 electoral votes to his tally. He also captured Ohio, bringing in 17 more electoral votes. On the other hand, Kamala Harris clinched New York, securing 28 electoral votes, keeping the state in the Democratic column for every election since 1984. Former President Trump also won North and South Dakota, further tightening his hold on the electoral map. Polling has closed in 15 states, and while voting has proceeded smoothly across much of the country, some states have reported long lines, technical glitches, and this is in fact in Pennsylvania, and temporary delays in Georgia, where bomb threats briefly disrupted these operations. However, those threats were quickly determined to be non-credible. With results continuing to pour in, both candidates are being poised for a close contest finish, and key battleground states remain crucial to the final outcome. Let's in fact quickly listen into what Trump had to say on the eve of these poll result day, as we in fact on the other side will be joined by guests and experts who will give their insights into this rather interesting election battle that is underway.
I don't have to tell them that. I don't have to tell. I don't have to tell them that there'll be no violence. Of course, there'll be no violence. My supporters are not violent people. I don't have to tell them that. And I certainly don't want any violence, but I certainly don't have to tell. These are great people. I'm not a Democrat. I'm able to make a speech on pretty quick notice. If I win, I know what I'm going to say, and I don't even want to think about the losing part. I would like to tell all of the people that are online to stay online. We have tremendous Republican lines, and I've been asked actually to say it. It takes a while. I'd like to just make the statement that I'd like the Republicans to stay online. Democrats, if they'd like, they can leave.
Regardless of what happens tonight, is this your last campaign, or are you done after this?
Yeah, I would think so. I would think so.
How do you feel about it?
Sad and very fulfilled. I think we're going to have a very big victory today.
Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are being joined by Swati Joshi, political activist and leader, TSB, National Board and Rise AAPI Board, live from Texas, for that matter. Well, Ms. Joshi, we continue our conversation with regards to this very interesting night in the US. In fact, I would like to begin this conversation with a question, not with regards to either of the candidates, but a report that we just played out for our viewers a little while back with regards to the need of Electoral College still being there in the US. In fact, being from the Democratic side yourself, what would you say is the take of the Democrats on this very concept? We knew why it was started historically, but now wouldn't you say Electoral College is more of a figurehead? They're just there to, go ahead with whatever the popular vote has come in from their particular counties.
Yeah. And absolutely, it was started by the founding fathers of the United States of America, and it's in the Constitution. And as the news report said, it would take a constitutional amendment to change that. And that constitutional amendments have been done, and so it's not that it cannot be done. So, your question is in terms of what do I think of it? I think it's a little antiquated. I don't think there's any other countries that have such a way of selecting their leader. I think it's more across the world. I think we use the popular vote to choose our leader, and there have been circumstances in the past where the candidates have won the popular vote but lost the election because the Electoral College went to the other candidate, and so. I think it's antiquated and needs to be revamped or removed from the Constitution, and just go with the simple, popular vote, and that gives the voice to the people, and they're the ones who say this person's more popular than the other, and that's who we want to run the country.
Ms. Joshi, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I do have to ask this. Does Harris have it in the works with regards to, or does she plan on bringing in such an amendment if she ends up becoming the president?
I think she has a lot of other things that are much more important to work on. I haven't heard anything about wanting to get rid of the Electoral College. So if she does want to do that, I don't know right now.
Right.
I would want it.
Right, absolutely. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we're also being joined by geopolitical analyst and president of the Scarab Rising, Inc., Irina Sukaman. Irina, very good evening to you. Very firstly, the last time we had a conversation was quite a historic event, if we may call it, during the campaign itself, when there was an assassination attempt on Trump. And I would like to bring in this question months after that particular attempt had taken place. Do you think Trump did play into that very angle much, or did we actually expect much more being done from his side, bringing in that assassination attempt each time, in his campaign? Do you think there were more expectations because of that historic, almost picture perfect expression of his we had seen right after the attempt where he said fight, fight, fight. Do you think that that actually did work out the way people were expecting, that he might actually make use of it?
Trump did make a good use of it, but mostly aimed at his own supporters. He basically kept telling them that I took a bullet for you and so forth. He didn't utilize as much with the general population, surprisingly. Some might question why he didn't play on it more. Others credit him for confidence in policy issues, that he didn't feel the need to rely on external incidents and to play victim in that sense. Regardless of that, its use with the general population did not come as much as expected, but other things did, and it was a very eventful election season, and it was almost impossible to keep track of every twist and turn. 2 assassination attempts, multiple threats, hacking attempts on both sides. Very heated election, to be sure, but at the end of the day, the political trends appear to be about 2 things that have nothing to do with all these factors. They're about policies and personalities. So who do the people, the voters, trust more, believe more, or fear more, or dislike less, and whether they're better off 4 years ago than they are now, as Trump asked during the debate with Kamala Harris.
Which brings me to my second question to you, Arina. Given that we had seen such assassination attempts, and then you very rightly pointed out there were 2 for that matter, we haven't seen any of the candidates speak a lot about gun violence in the United States during the campaigning, given that we had seen such assassination attempts during the rallies itself on one of the former presidents of America. So what does that bring out of this very campaign? We've seen other issues take center stage, but gun violence mentions not so much within the campaign. We have seen excerpts of it, of course, but not as much as one probably would expect after one of the candidates, in fact, having gone through such an assassination attempt. What's your take on it?
Actually, Kamala Harris pretty much neutralized that issue by portraying herself as a gun owner, and it was a good way for her to get rid of an issue she could not fully control. She had a good grasp of the abortion issue because she could use it to galvanize the women, and she did effectively. But there's a significant number of gun owners among Democrats, and say an issue that's heated, controversial, fiercely protected by the Second Amendment, and would probably have done her no favors to bring up negatively. So from her perspective, it was better to try to gain some of these potential Democratic gun-owning votes than to potentially concede issues to Donald Trump by debating him on that.
Right. Now, I in fact throw this question to the floor to both of you. I'll come to each of you for your responses. This is a mention of transgender rights that we had seen. In fact, the Republican side had tried bringing in as almost an attack on Harris. But this is the first time we've seen transgender rights, in fact, being mentioned as an electoral issue during the campaigns. And we had seen that, Harris coming out to be pro-transgender rights, because that's what Trump tried to imply in his campaigns, that she is to bring in funds for transgender inmates. At this point, how do you think the Americans, the voters out there, the American voters, had to react to this? Because we know there are Republicans out there who still think of the LGBTQIA community to be a community who suffers from some sort of an illness. So would you say some voters, in fact, were, shooed away, at a lack of better word at this given point, by Kamala by taking up this very issue? While we know the transgenders, in fact, came into her support, that yes, we feel glad that there is somebody recognizing us at such a platform. But do you think that a larger mass might have gotten, a little discouraged from supporting Harris because of this? I'll come to you, Ms. Joshi, first.
So I think from the Democratic side of point of view, we want to embrace everyone. So there's no like this person's better than the another person. So, transgender, all types of people are okay. And I don't think that it turned off any of or most of the Democrats.
Alienated is the word.
I think it was used
alienated
as a
is the
weapon.
word I
Pardon?
wanted to use. Alienated is the word I wanted to use.
Alienated.
Yeah, alienated.
Yeah. Yes. Correct. So I don't think it alienated the Democrats per se, but I think for the Republicans, that was a point to go against Kamala Harris and the Democrats because, for whatever reason, they think that that's not the way that humans are supposed to live. But I think all throughout history, there have been different types of people, and you can't stop them. You can't try to convert them. It's not a disease. It's just the way they are. So yes, I think it may have alienated Republicans, but for the most part, I don't know if it has alienated Democrats.
And Irina, your particular view on this very matter. What do you have to say about this aspect being brought into the campaign?
So, just as Kamala Harris effectively neutralized the gun law issue, Trump used the transgender issue to his advantage by never actually bringing up directly himself. He brought up anti-woke policy, to be sure. He brought up ethnic identity and racial identity politics plenty of times. He spoke about women. He spoke about practically everything without really naming this issue, and yet indicating that that's what his anti-woke position is all about. It's not necessarily about, going after any particular individuals and their rights, but it is about the excessive celebration of what he believes to be, a culture, a subculture, or a social contagion. That is the perspective that he put out, and it played well, but indirectly. It played well with the more conservative ethnic communities that have traditionally gone to Democrats. It became a concern among Muslim Americans, among African American and Hispanic men in particular, and other religious communities. So without even having to name it, he kind of appealed to those communities on the issue of family values, social conservatism, and so forth.
Right. At this point, let's also take a look at another campaign issue which both have been quite vocal about. Now, experts have also had to say that when speaking about economic policies, which in fact did take the center stage this campaign season, while Trump had quite a lot on his side with regards to what policies he will introduce, what he will be doing when and if he comes in as the president for another term, a lot of people had said that Kamala Harris, while she did have a lot to offer on the table, her promises seemed a little more vague than Donald Trump's. Why do you think that is? I'll come to you, Ms. Joshi, first.
I'd like to make a point that anytime Donald Trump opens his mouth, lies flow out. So he can say whatever he wants and make all these promises, but I don't know if he'll keep them. So, I think that just from the start, that's one thing that's always been a fact about Donald Trump. I think Kamala Harris has put together some plans. I know she has, to help small businesses, to help elderly with their medical costs, healthcare. Donald Trump has actually said that he's going to do away with Medicare, which is what we use when we retire. That's the insurance that we use in the U.S. to pay for our medical bills or help with our medical bills. So he's made some threats to get rid of some of the things that we already have, and then he can say whatever he wants, but I don't know if he will come through with the promises that he's made.
Right. And Irina, your take on this very matter? Would you agree with the experts who said that Kamala's policies seem a little vague when it comes to economy?
Well, her policies are vague when it comes to literally every issue. One of the factors, to be fair, is the fact that she jumped into the race at a very late stage, only 3 months. And it's not a lot of time to formulate a coherent plan when you're not expected to be the lead on the ticket. And for most of her vice presidency, she was essentially more of a communicator, more of a social policy attack dog than a policy formulation contributor. So this is a new area for her. On the other hand, it seems clear that she is likely to follow very much in Biden's steps for a couple of reasons. First, she herself said that she does not disagree with a single thing that the administration has done. So it doesn't mean that new issues won't come up and she won't deal with them differently, but on a lot of major issues, she's likely to continue her own legacy. The second issue is that much of her team, especially on foreign policy, is likely going to come from the very same group of people. So it's very likely that their take on many issues is going to be quite similar. So that means that she doesn't really need to formulate specific things if everyone assumes that she will pretty much be that stabilizing force against the unpredictable and explosive Donald Trump.
Right. Well, Ms. Joshi and Ms. Sukaman, thank you so much for joining us on News9 with your insights into the campaign, into what the results might look like only a few hours, hopefully, from now. Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to an end to this segment of the bulletin. We are slipping into a short break, but do stay tuned to News9 as we come back with more stories from the battlegrounds developing in the United States of America.
Are we ready to vote? Are we ready to win? Yes.
This one is a total stiff. You can't have her as your president.
The consequences of him ever being president again are brutally serious. Brutally serious.
You're a vice president. We will make America great again. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?
We are not going back. We're not going back. We're not going back. No.
The most admired cricket icon and former Team India head coach Rahul Dravid is in the headlines these days. But from the cricket ground, he's now been spotted facing the camera. What is the special thing that Mr. Dependable is now working on? Is Dravid working on his biopic? Or is it a new book or autobiography that he's planning? Is it an ad film or a new tournament that he's preparing for? What could be his next adventure? We are trying to find out. What's your guess?
The next Indian icons, beating everyone on the globe, B6E and XEV9E. Mahindra's electric origin SUVs. Catch them at Unlimit India.
the state not looking at putting an embargo on that?
As a Telangana person, I will not accept.
How do ordinary folks deal with this?
Indian Americans are redefining success in every field. However, Indian Americans haven't historically been a political force in US elections. But the 2024 race could mark a turning point for one of the fastest growing immigrant groups in the country. Ever since Kamala Harris, the daughter of an Indian mother, unexpectedly rose to become the 2024 Democratic nominee, Indian American communities say they've seen a groundswell of support and energy for this election. Elections are won on the margin, and Indian Americans can be that margin of victory. This is the Indian American vote.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching News 9, and we are consistently bringing you all the latest updates from the United States of America as we have reached the nth hour and the final countdown has begun. With that, let's also take you through some of the insightful conversations that we've had with experts with regards to this very election, the close contest that has developed between Kamala Harris from the Democratic side and Donald Trump from the Republican side. With that, my colleague Kartikeya Sharma spoke to former Assistant to the President for National Security Affairs, John Bolton. Let's take a look at what he had to say about the very election season.
And when I say very special guest, yes, I'm talking about Ambassador John Bolton, the former National Security Advisor to the President Donald Trump. He served as United States Ambassador to the United Nations from 2005 to 2006. He has spent many years of his career in public service and held high-level positions in the administration of the Presidents Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, and George W. Bush, apart from writing a book which has been a bestseller. Thank you so much, sir, for joining me. And let me straight away ask you, sir, if Donald Trump, sir, comes back, will it change the shape of American foreign policy?
Well, it certainly will be a lot different from Joe Biden's foreign policy and will differ from Kamala Harris, who I think will essentially be a continuation of Biden if she wins. But if the first term is any indication of how Trump will perform, his approach will be very erratic, hard to predict, episodic, transactional, not following a coherent strategy, and focused as much on trade and alleged problems in trading relationships as on bigger strategic questions.
How will this change impact India, in your opinion, sir?
Well, I think that Trump believes he has a very good personal relationship with Prime Minister Modi. I think they've demonstrated that. Really, it's very hard to tell, though, how Trump will approach India given the circumstances we face in the Indo-Pacific. Trump during the campaign has certainly been very critical of China, but it's not necessarily the case that once he's elected that he'll continue along that route. If Xi Jinping calls him up the day after the election and says, "I'm so glad you won, Donald, Biden was a terrible president, he's made so many problems, but now you and I can get together and fix them," I think Trump will be tempted to follow that route. When we had meetings between the Prime Minister and the President, when I was National Security Advisor to advance the Asian Security Quad, India, Japan, Australia, and the United States, the only thing we could get Trump to talk about was trade and his complaints about Indian discrimination against American products. I think that's almost certain to continue, notwithstanding that I believe the U.S.-India relationship overall, politically and economically, will be the most important of the 21st century.
So you said that this time the priority will be different in case Trump comes back to power. The world has changed in the last 24 months. You have an active theater in Ukraine and you have an active theater in West Asia, which is Gaza, Lebanon, and Yemen. What would be his approach in your assessment? Two active wars.
Well, he doesn't really know. I mean, these are important questions that you're raising. It is reported overnight. I mean, as we speak, the government of Ukraine is reporting that they engaged North Korean troops inside Russia in the Kursk province. This is the first time we've seen troops from Asia and Eastern Europe probably since Genghis Khan. And it shows the evolution of the China-Russia axis. It's certainly not perfectly formed yet, but they've got outriders like Iran and North Korea. So that means the conflict in Europe has really brought Asia directly in front of Europe and makes Ukraine, I think, that much more difficult to solve. In the Middle East, as you rightly say, this is a very serious situation, basically an assault by Iran on Israel, but through a strategy that could be applied to the Arab states as well. And we know China threatens now not just Taiwan in the East China Sea, but has recently made incursions into Japanese airspace and the Japanese maritime domain. In the South China Sea, I think you're probably very familiar with, notwithstanding the recent agreement between India and China about the line of actual control between the two countries. I think there's a danger and risk all along China's periphery.
So there's used to be an old saying that when American economy sneezes, the global economy catches pneumonia. So when the American state retracts from the global affairs, what happens, sir?
Well, I'm very worried that that the chances for global anarchy increase. It's very helpful to the United States to have a strong international presence. International trade depends on a certain level of stability, and when the United States and its friends and all of us who believe in freedom of the seas and open markets, as we called it during the Trump administration, we want a free and open Indo-Pacific. If somebody isn't helping make that happen, it won't happen. And just as the most recent example, I think, of failure is we see the Houthis in Yemen have closed the Suez Canal Red Sea passage at the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. There's a direct impact on trade from Asia, East Asia, South Asia, through the Suez Canal into Europe. And we're not doing what we could do to stop the Houthis from closing the strait. I think it's a big mistake, but that, if you want to know what it looks like when America turns inward, what the Houthis are doing in Yemen, others can do the same thing elsewhere.
But then what happens to the allies, sir, who depend on the American support, their goodwill and activism?
Well, I'm very worried about that. I think it's a real possibility this time. If he's reelected, Trump will withdraw from NATO. It's possible that he will put great strains on the bilateral alliances with Japan and South Korea. He doesn't fully understand the concept of collective defense. He doesn't understand that America benefits from these alliances. Certainly our alliance partners benefit, but the U.S. benefits, and he doesn't understand that. He basically thinks we're providing defense for Europe, and they don't pay us enough for it. That's not the way it works. Certainly many of our allies could spend more on defense, but that doesn't mean that they're unworthy of being part of the alliance.
So what has been the single most issue that has dominated this US election? What is your assessment, sir?
Well, I think there are basically two or three issues that, from Trump's point of view anyway, are the dominant issues. One is the economy, the inflation caused during the Biden administration that hurts average Americans, working class Americans, by raising all of their prices for food and energy. Second is control over the border, the Mexican border, to prevent illegal immigrants from coming across, which was a problem not entirely solved during Trump's first term, but very substantially so, that Biden just opened up again. And I think crime is a problem, the threat of disorder in American cities. These are Trump's most effective issues. If he wins, he will believe he has a mandate on those issues. Kamala Harris is really talking about a completely different set of issues. If she wins, you know, that's what she'll focus on. But the issues I've just enumerated are what Trump thinks are the priorities.
So generally people all across the world see Kamala Harris from the prism of Joe Biden. Do you think that she can depart from Biden's foreign policies?
Well, that's a question that we can't answer at this point, although I know everybody's asking it. My prediction, for what it's worth, would be, because she came into the vice presidency with very little foreign policy experience, what she has learned and the way problems have been analyzed, she's picked up essentially from sitting through National Security Council meetings, getting intelligence briefings, meeting with many foreign leaders. So based on what we know, I think the most likely direction would be for a substantial period of time, a year and a half, her policy will look a lot like Biden's policy. But she will have her own team of advisors. The situation in the world will change. New threats and challenges will emerge. And she will get more comfortable making decisions involving key politico-military issues, so that, at some point her policy may diverge from Biden's, but, Biden's policy might have evolved too if he had gotten the second term.
So is America ready for a woman president, sir?
Yeah, I don't think this is really a hard question. I don't know whether Harris will win or Trump will win. I don't think anybody knows at the moment. But I think America was ready before this. I don't think Hillary Clinton lost because she was a woman. I think she lost because she offered very unappealing policies to people. And I don't think this will be another setback or anything that makes it look like a female couldn't win. Nikki Haley ran a very respectable campaign for the Republican nomination. She, like everybody else, was defeated by Trump, but it's only a matter of time when it happens now.
So a lot of people are amazed at the way the political middle ground in America has collapsed. What are your thoughts on that? Why has political middle ground collapsed in America, which has been the beacon of knowledge, technology, whether it's space, satellite, even humanities, but there is a collapse of a political middle ground. Why has that happened, sir, in the last 20 years?
Well, I think there has been a polarization in America, there's no doubt about it, but we've gone through this cycle on many occasions, and while the country is divided politically, this is nothing even vaguely approximating what happened in 1860-61 when a civil war broke out. We've had this polarization before. It's not pleasant, but we've gotten over it. Often it's because a crisis arises internationally that draws people together. I wish our politics were more civil. I wish we talked more about issues instead of personalities. But I don't think the situation is dire. It's not a great period, but we'll get through it.
And my last question to you, sir, what's your assessment? Is Harris on top?
I don't think anybody knows at this point. All of the projections and polls are done, and it's about as close to even as I think the statistics can indicate. I would just remind everybody, though, that even a small shift in the popular vote can have a big impact on the Electoral College. People talk about the 7 swing states. Harris could win all 7 by 1 percentage point, or Trump could win all 7 by 1 percentage point. What I do hope we have is a clear and quickly decided election, not to have it drag out like it did in 2020. I think that's better for the country, whichever candidate wins.
Thank you so much, sir, for joining me on our special broadcast. So the former National Security Advisor of America, Mr. Bolton, very candid, very candid on the American election. But he says that the worst has been witnessed in the past.
Well, a rather interesting conversation with regards to either sides, if they come in, if Kamala Harris comes to power or Donald Trump comes to power, who shall do what in terms of defense, geopolitics, a lot, in fact, having been discussed in that conversation. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we are slipping into a short break, but do stay tuned to News 9 as I come back with more stories from the grounds, as well as a live discussion lined up next.
The next Indian icons, beating everyone on the globe, B6E and XEV9E. Mahindra's electric origin SUVs. Catch them at Unlimit India.
how do you fulfill that promise? Because ultimately expectations have to be met. If you look at the political landscape, is it really changing for women? And what is the inability of the forces that dead bodies surface, but not the living people?
Have an opportunity in this election to turn the page on a decade of Donald Trump.
You say Harris, nobody knows who the heck we're talking about, right?
Democracy's biggest stage.
What are the key issues dominating the U.S. presidential polls? I'm Hamza Kambazai coming to you with all the updates from Washington, D.C.
Take a look at what happened.
A grand presidential contest.
I'm Ujwal and I shall get you minute-by-minute updates on the shifting voters' mood in the US presidential elections.
News9 captures the moment.
We'll tell you how the verdict will impact you and the global economy.
Washington, D.C., New York, Texas, Atlanta, Detroit. Ground reports and analysis.
For live updates, please stay tuned to News9.
Stay live with News9.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We here are consistently keeping a track of the final countdown to the 60th presidential election in the United States of America. Who shall win the race to the White House? That is the big question of the hour. Well, without any delay, let me quickly introduce you our panel of guests right now. Retired Major General Ashwini Suvaj, defense and geopolitical expert, is joining us on the broadcast, as well as Sandeep Punnathan, News9 editor, News9 Plus editor, is also here with us. Very good morning to all, both you gentlemen. Well, Major, I will come to you first. You know, I want your views with regards to the picture that we'll see in the United States of America and the geopolitical picture if Kamala Harris comes to power, A, and on the other side, if Donald Trump comes to power. What will it be like in the next 4 years to come for United States of America?
Yeah, Shreya, very correct. See, as far as Kamala Harris is concerned, she will be extension of the policy which is being followed by Joe Biden. You see, as on today, what is happening in the world is there are two wars going on, and the complete economy of the world is shattered, especially by Russia-Ukraine war, and also the war going between Israel and the proxies of Iran, and also directly with Iran, in Middle East as well as in Europe. Now, this has adversely affected the whole world. So this, in case Kamala Harris comes, I don't think there is going to be any change. This war will carry on. And as far as other 2-3 issues are concerned, the economy of America is not doing well. She will focus more on the policy which Biden following, especially on abortion, especially on economy, especially on inflation. She will play more safe. But in case Donald Trump comes, there are going to be radical change. Now, 3-4 radical change, one can see it, that his focus is more on economy, inflation, immigration, illegal immigration. So one thing is very clear, you will find it that illegal immigration will be almost stopped, and he will basically deport those who have been illegally migrated. Second thing, he will take care of the economy. Third thing is that he possibly, considering his personality and what he's seen in earlier tenure of 2016-2020, everyone is looking for that can the Russia-Ukraine war be stopped? Because the way things are happening, it will carry on for another 2-3 years because it's a frozen war. It is carrying on. Same way as far as Israel and Iran war also against the proxies in Middle East will stop, because possibly he may give a loose rope to Israel, and Iran will think 10 times to attack on Israel. So possibly there also Donald Trump will sort of dictate the way he wants it. So one feels it in case Donald Trump come, then these wars can stop in near future because he has been talking about that he wants this war to finish it off because they are adversely affecting the economy of the world. So this is the main thing. As far as the terrorism concerned, Donald Trump is very, very clear. He will go against terrorism, and he also has another thing that as far as India is concerned, there are 2-3 issues wherein you find that Donald Trump is far better for Indians than Kamala Harris. One is the Kashmir issue, the terrorism issue is concerned, what is happening in Bangladesh, especially the Hindus have been targeted there, and he has commented about that because this was a coup which was generated by the US. Another thing is that in case Kamala Harris comes, true like Democrats, they will raise certain issues of human rights in Kashmir and all, which has been a normal issue which they keep on doing. So possibly from the defense point of view, Donald Trump will be far better for India. Economy, of course, they will be, he's always putting pressure that he will put additional tariff. But I suppose that free trade agreement during his last tenure was about to be finalized. Then thereafter, things didn't move in the right direction. But one can pick up again from there and try to have a free trade agreement. In case we have a free trade agreement, then you'll find that things will be moving very smoothly between India and US as far as the economy is concerned. More, one can say, as far as the coordination against China is concerned, Quad is concerned, Indo-Pacific is concerned, I think the clear-cut direction of Donald Trump will be far better for us than what is Kamala Harris. So overall, one can say that Kamala Harris will be play safe. She will follow whatever are the policies which are now by the Biden government, as well, especially the war which is going in Russia, Ukraine, and also in Middle East, whereas Donald Trump will be quite different, and possibly the chances of this war finishing in near future is very high. He will focus more on America first, economy, inflation, and illegal migration. But if you consider it from the Indian point of view, I suppose Donald Trump is a far better candidate for India than Kamala Harris.
Right, Major. So, Major, your opinion on what we are seeing in the early trends as well?
Yeah, of course, you can see it that the trend which is, you can see that Trump has already taken 198 Electoral College, whereas Kamala Harris is only 109. So it is very clear. See, the point today is she does not bring anything fresh. She is repeating what Joe Biden is saying. She is only bringing that the women rights, they have rights on their own body, their abortion laws. But Trump has also made it clear that he's not going to interfere as far as this issue is concerned. Whatever the states decide, he will follow that. I suppose that has not gone or that has not clicked that much to the US public. She thought that she will divide the female versus the male. More female will vote Kamala Harris vis-a-vis Donald Trump. But the way the results have come, it doesn't seem to be. People have utilized their mind. They have seen it, what is good for the world. Possibly, they are thinking that Donald Trump, with the personality he has and the way the situations are fanning in the world, will able to dictate terms and finish these two wars, which are the one which are adversely affecting the economy of the world. I suppose people are going for that, and they want America first. They don't want illegal migration. The economy of US is not doing well. So I suppose he bring a fresh package, and people think that he will able to give sort of a value added to what is happening as on today. Whereas Kamala Harris will follow what has been followed by Joe Biden. She has not able to spell out anything fresh. When it was asked how she will fix the economy, she was not very clear. How she will able to take care of inflation, she wasn't very clear. Illegal migration, she has not able to do anything in last 4 years as a vice president. So possibly, I don't think she will able to change that stance dramatically. So overall, I suppose Donald Trump has, wrong or right, has a clear-cut policy. And that is what the public is looking after. And his slogan of America First, I think that has resonated with the people of US.
Right, Major. In fact, right now, I will cut across to Sandeep. Sandeep, I have a very specific question for you. They say that babies are born with guns in America, and statistically there are more guns in America than there are people, right? But despite seeing two assassination attempts on one of the candidates itself, we did not see gun violence take a center stage as a poll issue this time. Why would you say that happened?
Well, Shreya, that's an interesting question. I don't think there's any other democracy in the world where a presidential candidate has survived possibly 2 assassination attempts, and yet that candidate says nothing, is silent about gun control, simply because both sides of the Democrats and the Republicans are deeply invested in the so-called gun lobby. And let's not forget, Shreya, that the gun control, gun ownership is intrinsic to the United States. It's literally written into their constitution. The right to bear arms. I mean, it's one of the very few democracies in the world where the right to bear arms is a fundamental right. And, that comes from the very peculiar nature of the US freedom struggle in the 18th century, where the freedom fighters led by George Washington actually revolted. They overthrew the British rule primarily, and because they had free access to guns, and they made that as part of their constitution, the right to bear arms. And the British, seeing the example of what they faced in North America, did exactly this in the Indian subcontinent. When they began ruling in India, they ensured there was very strict gun control on the so-called natives, so that the natives could never get free access to firearms. So they actually ensured that they would never see a situation like they did in the United States, in India. But, coming to the United States, the right to bear arms, like I said, has been very intrinsic to the United States. And that's one of the reasons you have such a large number of guns there, proliferation of firearms. The United States possibly accounts for 50% of all of the civilian-owned firearms in the entire world. And, the kind of statistics are staggering. Bearing arms and all of that. And that is the reason that you have this kind of, automatic rifles in the hands of citizens. General Sivach would find it horrifying that, there are possibly counties and districts in the United States that would possibly have more assault rifles than Indian Army infantry divisions. That is the kind of, gun ownership that's permissible in the United States. And therefore, both sides are pretty silent on the issue of gun control. So where they would actually go down to, Shreya, is the fact that you can own guns, but you can't have fully automatic assault rifles, right? So that's where they draw the line. So your assault rifle can only be semi-automatic, which means it can fire only one shot at a time and not a series of bullets. So you can't have high-capacity magazines. For instance, certain states don't allow high-capacity magazines. But the overall question of gun ownership, that no one's willing to address. And that's been a big problem, given the kind of school shootings that you've seen. And of course, very recently, the 2 assassination attempts on Donald Trump. Despite all of that, guns in the United States are here to stay. There's absolutely no question of that ever being an election issue in the United States. The banning of firearms. So like I said, it's going to be these minor little tweaks that they will, with semi-automatic and automatic and high capacity and all that. But overall, the gun lobby is so strong that, nothing is going to happen to, guns are not going to be taken away from
right. So
US
do you think it's right to say that they've both sort of played safe around this very topic, around this very issue? When we look at the campaigns. Yeah, both the candidates have played very safe. They didn't want to, talk a lot about this topic with their voters.
Absolutely. And the most interesting thing to me, Shreya, in this whole presidential debate was the fact that Kamala Harris owned up to owning a gun. She said she had a semi-automatic pistol that was identified as being a Glock 17 or a Glock 19, if I remember correctly. So Kamala Harris is here. She's saying, hey, listen, I'm one of you. Given the fact that how closely contested this election is, that it was until some time back neck and neck. It doesn't seem to be the case right now, but This election was literally neck and neck. So you have to appeal to every single constituency. You have to go to the blacks, to the Hispanics, to the Latinos. You have to go to gun owners. You have to go to gay rights. You have to go to the pro-abortionists, every category has to be wooed. And, when we talk about vote banks in India, take a look at the vote banks in the United States. General Sivach would agree. I don't think we ever thought we'd see a situation in the United States where there would be more vote banks in the US than there are in India, Shreya.
Absolutely, Sandeep. Thank you so much for bringing us that insight with regards to this very crucial topic, which we have in fact seen most leaders speak about in general, but not a mention in this election. Yes, Major Sivach, you had a point to make here.
Yeah. What I want to say, Shreya, as far as the gun lobby is concerned, in US is very strong. There's a bipartisan understanding because they fund the election though. So both, whether it is Democrat or Republicans, they get a lot of fun from this gun lobby. So they do not want to stick any laws which are against the gun lobby. And it is impacting the economy of the country. Though there are, if you see, the attitude of the Republican and Democrat is slightly different. Democrat wants to bring some strict laws, but Republican don't want. But it is a gun lobby which is very strong. Financially, it backs both the parties in the election. And therefore, I don't think in future also they are going to be strict gun laws. And this way the things are going on, it will carry on in US.
Absolutely. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on this broadcast with those interesting insights about these particular aspects and topics within this very campaign. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to an end to this bulletin, but do stay tuned to News 9 as I keep bringing you all the latest updates from the United States of America as the final countdown to the 60th presidential election is currently underway.
Are we ready to vote? Are we ready to win? Yes.
This one is a total stiff. You can't have her as your president.
The consequences of him ever being president again are brutally serious. Brutally serious.
You're a vice president. We will make America great again. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?
We are not going back. We're not going back. We're not going back.
Why is the state not looking at putting an embargo on that?
As a Telangana person, I will not accept.
How do ordinary folks deal with this?
How do you fulfill that promise? Because ultimately expectations have to be met. If you look at the political landscape, is it really changing for women? And what is the inability of the forces that dead bodies surface, but not the living people?
the state not looking at putting an embargo on that?
As a Telangana person, I will not accept.
How do ordinary folks deal with this?
Are we ready to vote? Are we ready to win?
This one is a total stiff. You can't have her as your president.
The consequences of him ever being president again are brutally serious. Brutally serious.
You're a vice president. We will make America great again. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?
We are not going back. We're not. We're not going
Well, as of now, we have the American elections that is in fact bringing in the red electoral colleges right away, giving a lead to Trump in the 60th US presidential elections, where Americans are set to decide their 47th president and 50th vice president in a tight race between Kamala Harris, Donald Trump, Tim Walz and J.D. Vance. But it looks like the exits have got it wrong, as most of them are in fact showing, as the results come in, that Trump is having quite a heady lead when it comes to the early trends that we see when the electoral votes are being declared from each state. Now, the results are rolling in, and early returns show a deadlock contest between the former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris. But as the details from several other eastern coastal states as well as central states, especially in the Bible Belt, is coming in, we understand that Trump is getting a lead, while Kamala has in fact swept through the blue states. Trump is of course held on to the red states and is right now the electoral vote stands around 198 to 112. Now, in the first batch of results, Donald Trump had claimed Kentucky, securing 8 electoral votes, continuing a Republican streak that has been unbroken since 1996. Now, West Virginia also goes red with Trump winning. He has now added Oklahoma, Tennessee, Missouri, Alabama and Florida as well to his tally. Now, on the Democratic side, Kamala Harris has secured Vermont, bringing in 3 electoral votes as expected from reliably blue state. Now, Harris also claims victories in Maryland and Massachusetts, further solidifying her lead in these traditional Democratic strongholds. In Indiana, Trump captured 11 electoral votes, continuing his dominance in the historically conservative state. He has now won Indiana in all 3 of his presidential runs, with Republicans holding the governor's office here for the last 2 decades. Clearly, Indiana being on the Republican side. Vice President Kamala Harris extended her lead with a win in Connecticut, securing 7 more electoral votes, as well as Rhode Island, another Democratic stronghold. Meanwhile, Trump continued his winning streak, claiming Texas for the 3rd consecutive election, adding a significant 40 electoral votes to his tally. Now, Texas being one of the big states with big electoral votes. He also captured Ohio, bringing in 17 more electoral votes. On the other hand, Kamala Harris clinched New York, securing 28 electoral votes, again one of the large blue states that Kamala Harris has been able to secure, keeping the state in the Democratic column for every elections since 1984. Now, former President Trump also won North and South Dakota, further tightening his hold on the electoral map. Polling was closed in 15 states, and while voting was proceeded smoothly much of the country, some states have reported long lines, technical glitches of course in Pennsylvania, and temporary delays in Georgia, where bomb threats were briefly disrupted operations. Let's in fact listen to what President Trump had said just after his voting, and about his what he claims would be a trend to set with.
I don't have to tell them that. I don't have to tell them that there'll be no violence. Of course there'll be no violence. My supporters are not violent people. I don't have to tell them that. And I certainly don't want any violence, but I certainly don't have to tell. These are great people. I'm not a Democrat. I'm able to make a speech on pretty quick notice. If I win, I know what I'm going to say, and I don't even want to think about the losing part. I would like to tell all of the people that are online to stay online. We have tremendous Republican lines, and I've been asked actually to say it. It takes a while. I'd like to just make the statement that I'd like the Republicans to stay online. Democrats, if they'd like, they can leave.
Regardless of what happens tonight, is this your last campaign, or are you done after this?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, I would think so.
How do you feel about it?
Sad, and very fulfilled. I think we're going to have a very big victory today.
Well, former President Trump, in fact, ensuring that 198 of the electoral votes in his kitty, as early trends show. Harris with 112. Trump has, in fact, swept through traditional Republican strongholds, while Harris has also held on to the blue strongholds of the Democrats. It's, again, all are waiting for some results to come in from the swing states as well to see how the situation would unfold in this hotly contested presidential elections in the United States. Harris had, in fact, looked at traditional blue states. Well, let's in fact also take a look at what's happening when it comes to the situation in the United States as the results are coming in. Thus, we have Dr. Rajiv Bhateja, co-founder, Desi, in fact, Desi Blue, and he is speaking to us from California. And we have Major General retired Sanjay Mason, defense and geopolitical expert. Well, we have, let us go first to Rajiv Bhateja on this. Rajiv Bhateja, how do you in fact see the early trends that are coming in? Of course, right now what analysts are saying is that Republican strongholds have been with Trump, and blue states, traditional blue states have also been with Harris. But where do you see, could there be a possible seesaw in what we are seeing right now in the early trends?
Oh, well, it's hard to anticipate a seesaw. I mean, the blue states tend to remain blue and the red states tend to remain red. And the real sort of tiebreakers are the battleground states, the 7 battleground states where, you know, things are usually on a knife edge. Usually when you look at the polling results, there's something known as a red mirror and a blue shift. So it's well known that the rural areas of the United States are red and the urban areas are blue, right? The rural areas are Republican, the urban areas are Democratic. So what tends to happen when you're running electoral results early on the day of the election, the smaller rural counties are able to count their votes pretty quickly and report their results. And so you see a lot of red, whereas the larger urban counties with a lot higher populations, sometimes hundreds of times more than the rural population counties, you know, they take a lot longer to report their results. And so in the beginning, a lot of stuff looks red, but then when you actually count up the big counties, things tend to shift towards blue. So that's the origin of the statement, the red mirage and the blue shift. Of course, the question is, where are we going to land between the red and the blue? And that's always a tricky question. But, you know, we think that this is, again, a very close election. I'd be hard-pressed to say that I can predict which way it's going to go. I don't think anybody can. But we are hopeful that, you know, Kamala Harris will prevail. I will say one other thing, which is, historically, it's been extremely difficult for a sitting vice president to run for president and actually win. It's happened very few times in the history of the United States. The last time it happened was in 1988 when George H.W. Bush got elected president after being vice president for 8 years. If you were to go back to the previous time that happened, you'd have to go back all the way to 1836 when Martin Van Buren ran for president as vice president and actually won. And more recently, we've seen examples where sitting vice presidents have not been able to capitalize on their, or their term as vice president and win the presidential election right after being vice president. So that happened with Al Gore in 2000. That happened with Hubert Humphrey, and it's happened going back with Richard Nixon, actually, when he was vice president under Dwight Eisenhower. And the reason for that is the vice presidency is a role where the person is primarily in the background. And so it's very hard for them to point to specific accomplishments. Hubert Humphrey famously was asked, what did you accomplish as vice president? And his answer was nothing, but let me tell you what I accomplished as a senator. And so Kamala Harris has that baggage with her, right? The statistically or historically, the odds of a vice president becoming president.
So you're saying that when it comes to Kamala Harris, you're saying that here's a person who isn't, who's been part of an administration, but cannot independently tell her voters that this is what she could do, or rather, this is what she has achieved. Yes.
Or has done, yeah.
So it's a kind of unique situation where you are in the system, but you have to, go there and say that, I can give a futuristic kind of a promise. So
exactly.
it's not an enviable position at all.
Right, exactly.
And you come with the presidential consequences as well. You do tend to represent the presidential baggage of negatives as well.
Exactly.
All right.
So, George H.W. Bush famously said, I'll take all of the blame if you give me half the credit.
All right. Okay. All right. In fact, we have with us Major General Sanjay Mason as well, who's defense and geopolitical expert. Sanjay Mason, your first reactions on how the situation is unfolding in the United States. And of course, how do you see maybe a second Trump presidency on the geopolitical map, especially on the Asia-Pacific region? We have seen how it was during the first part of it. Quad is something that was, initiated and probably looked into from that aspect. But how does Trump view, and Trump's second presidency would view Quad and also Asia-Pacific tilt, as it's called?
Verghese, good morning, and good morning to Dr. Rajiv also. Firstly, the initial reactions are it appears to be a tough race. But if you see the vote swing presently, it appears to be in favor of President Trump. But then the blues, especially in the, the urban areas, when they are counted in these 7 swing states, even Pennsylvania, as of now, seems to be a very, very tight walk for both of them. So I think in the later half of the day, some clarity will emerge. But now coming to your question, if President Trump comes as a second-term president, how will the geostrategic environment change, and especially in East Asia and whatsoever? I personally feel, having observed President Trump in the first term, firstly, my personal take is that I find President Trump is a very brash kind of a president, whose statements are very erratic, and, you cannot have a head of state taking very brash decisions which can go either way. I'll give you some small examples. You look even in Saudi Arabia, when Khashoggi was killed in Turkey, and I think the US intelligence and Turks had stated that the Saudi, the prince, his hand was there. But when Trump became the president, he visited him, and the Democrats were very clear that they had stated that human rights is a big issue, and they had even suggested that they will cut off the military aid which they were giving to Saudi Arabia for them to fight the war in against Yemen. But when Trump became the president, he did not lay any emphasis on human rights. And I think he visited and tried to improve the relations with Saudi Arabia. So a lot of things are there, like even in Israel-Hamas war, Trump's statement has been very clear that he does not mind Israelis going full helter-skelter in Gaza, whereas Kamala Harris or the Democrats have been stating that Israel has got the right for self-defense. So there's a lot of difference. he has taken some bold decisions, but certain of the decisions like meeting with the North Korean dictator then, I think it didn't yield any results. So it appears to be very good, but finally it is what results will be yielded. And he is also now talking about, that he will bring in peace between Russia and Ukraine and even in this West Asia conflict. I really doubt what kind of peace he can bring, because the warring factions are two. It is Russia and Ukraine, and similarly in the other two, it is the Iran-led faction against the Israelis. So what kind of peace he can bring? So he has given a lot of statements that he will do this in the world and he will not like the Americans to get involved in war. And including, he wants to put NATO at a little, I would say, at a slow pace, even about the funding aspect. President Trump should realize, when 9/11 happened, there were 52 countries which were part of the International Security Assistance Force led by US 4-star General. And I happened to be posted in Afghanistan that time from 2011 to 14. So I know how those 52 countries assisted and were part of the effort of the United States, and many of them, all were in fact NATO countries, and some were even Japan, South Korea, many of these countries. Now today, if Trump talks about America will fight its war alone, I think it's a very, very wrong direction. Today in the geostrategic environment, one has to be very, very clear that it is, I would definitely not say it is alliances, but yes, it is balancing of forces which matter. You look today in Russia is taking support from North Korea, from Iran, from China, and all these, rogue states. So similarly, the United States under President Biden has been moving the NATO fairly well to be a good challenge and supporting Ukraine. Now tomorrow, if let's assume President Trump cuts off aid to Ukraine, obviously the dictator, so-called, I would say Putin, he will thereafter start threatening other European countries. And if that happens, and let's assume President Trump says, no, I will not do anything, it's your battle. But tomorrow, if some 9/11 kind of a situation happens in America, and let me tell you, it is possible. Why? America today has become a very racial-oriented society. Radicalism has increased like hell. And not only that, if you see, majority, this gun culture which has prevailed, I think it's one of the countries where every day you keep hearing about people coming and shooting people. So there is depression and there's so many things. The hatred has increased. So tomorrow, if America is in this kind of a scenario, which country will then be wanting to assist America? So I think President Trump, if he becomes, he has to be very pragmatic. He has to understand the existing geostrategic environment, which is extremely important. You cannot just be one-man army. And yeah, another thing is he appears to be one-man army. See, you look at his chief of staff. He was a former Marine general who was with him, chief of staff, and earlier he was also handling, the equivalent to the Home Minister of India. So he was that powerful. And when he came out, he said, Trump is a fascist, he is dangerous for the country. And not only that, he said he admires Hitler, and he assumed that all the generals will be loyal to him the way Hitler's generals were loyal to him. Now, this is the army is for the people. It is not for a particular president. Right. So the way President Trump is going, I think, I do not know if he is elected. And then even talking about this immigration, he said he'll start deporting these people back to South America. How is it possible? There will be so much of violence. It's not easy to say something and execute it on ground. It's extremely different. So I think in the long run, probably how the situation will unfold is too difficult to say. But looking at his past pattern, here you have a president who has taken top secret documents in his toilet. He stored them there. How can the nation trust him? So he is a very erratic person, and I do not know. Though a lot of people would be happy, Russia would be happy, even Indians are happy. Iran may not be happy. So I do not know. It's a very difficult thing to say. But
yes. We get that part of it because, as you said, a lot of people might be happy. But how it pans out in the larger context for the United States as well for the rest of the world. But stay with us. We have Srini Sriraghavan, who has in fact been spoken to by us. He's Indo-American Republican chair. Let's listen to what he has to say.
How are you celebrating this victory where President Trump is likely to make it to Oval Office? No, for sure. So thank you for inviting me. And as you can see from the cheer over here, I mean, we are absolutely relieved. First, Texas went Republican. Senator Ted Cruz, he's elected now. And now we are on our way to getting Trump elected. I think that is the right thing to do. That is the right thing to do for the future of America and for the future of, the whole world, and even for India-America relationships. And so this is a key thing. So,
especially, what was the key areas that you like that Trump to make changes? Especially, most of the people talk about illegal immigration and the taxpayers' money. So, is that the key thing, or unemployment, or the economy? What is your?
Yeah, I think the first thing that he's going to fix is basically the border issue. So I think closing down the border would be the first thing. But then immediately, I think it's going to be the economy, right? Bringing the prices down, bringing the inflation down. I think that is going to be the key. So those are the top two priorities I think that Trump is going to focus on.
And do you think, especially with after the election is over, Trump is going to get the Democrats also into his fold and make it like a bipartisan kind of scenario after going forward as a president of the United States of America?
I think between him and Kamala, I think Trump is going to be the more unifying president. So he's definitely going to try to bring all the, both parties together and try to generate consensus. But again, cooperation has to be from both sides. So we'll see what the mood of the Democrats is. But Trump is definitely going to try for that.
Well, we slip into a short break now. Don't go anywhere. We'll come with more updates on the other side. We also have Rajiv Ateja as well as Sanjay Mason with us, and we will discuss about how the situation would unfold in the coming hours. That's after the break.
Are we ready to vote? Are we ready to win?
Yes. This one is a total stiff. You can't have her as your president.
The consequences of him ever being president again are brutally serious. Brutally serious.
You're a vice president. We will make America great again. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?
We are not going back. We're not going back. We're not going
The most admired cricket icon and former Team India head coach Rahul Dravid is in the headlines these days. But from the cricket ground, he's now been spotted facing the camera. What is the special thing that Mr. Dependable is now working on? Is Dravid working on his biopic? Or is it a new book or autobiography that he's planning? Is it an ad film or a new tournament that he's preparing for? What could be his next adventure? We are trying to find out. What's your guess?
The next Indian icons, beating everyone on the globe, B6E and XEV9E. Mahindra's electric origin SUVs. Catch them at Unlimit India.
How do you fulfill that promise? Because ultimately expectations have to be met. If you look at the political landscape, is it really changing for women? And what is the inability of the forces that dead bodies surface, but not the living people?
Cooking is an act of love. The first act of love we receive from our mothers in the families.
Modern Indian food is all about contemporary and innovative approach to traditional Indian cooking.
Representation it's also important, no?
I want to wear this white coat every day and then be a chef.
There are stories. If the name of whiskey is Indri, then there is a whole story behind that.
Cooking food is like a therapy, and eating one is like a pleasure I can give it to myself. With Lounge Nights, I'm on a journey to celebrate and recognize the best food and nightlife establishments in various cities across India.
Radical presents Lounge Nights every Saturday and Sunday only on News9 Live.
One of the biggest issues that have been with regard to this election has been the question about gender and gender policies. Democrat Sarah McBride became the first openly transgender person elected to the U.S. House of Representatives, winning election to Delaware's at-large seat. Now, lawmakers in 37 U.S. states introduced at least 142 bills to restrict gender-affirming healthcare for transgender expansive people in 2023, which is nearly 3 times as many as the previous year. Now, in Congress, Republicans have pushed anti-trans bills at the national level for years. Now, Sarah's win marks a new milestone.
I am very mindful that my responsibility is not to any other community that I'm a part of other than the community that is the state of Delaware. My job is to be the best member of Congress that I can be for Delawareans, working on all of the issues that matter. And that will be the only way that I can guarantee that while I may be a first, I'm not the last. So I'm not doing this to make history. I'm not doing this to be a trailblazer. I'm doing this to give back. I'm doing this to serve. I'm doing this to make a difference.
Well, let me get in fact Dr. Rajiv Bateja into this. Rajiv Bateja, gender issues is something that was very close to Democrats' hearts. A lot of them do in fact espouse it. Kamala Harris has in fact spoken about not only gender issues but also support to the LGBTQI community as well. Now, the question over here that I wanted to ask was that what is there in the United States, because trying to speak with some people on the other side as well, I get this feeling that the white Anglo male Protestant view about masculinity is something that is also an undercurrent among a lot of male voters, especially in the Bible Belt and probably even in certain southern states. Is there some truth to that this election could in fact reflect as an undercurrent among male voters?
Well, I mean, America, for whatever claims it makes, is still a male-dominated society. That's a fact, and you can see that in the percentage of women who are in high. See that in the number in the Senate or in the House, and certainly we're one of the few developed countries that has never had a female head of state. So it is a male-dominated society. It is still sort of the male hierarchy is still present here, and I think that's part of what has impacted. That's part of what has impacted the candidacy of Hillary Clinton, 8 years ago, and potentially now maybe I'm sure some degree is impacting Kamala Harris's candidacy as well. When it comes to the transgender issue, this is new ground socially, and certainly, from a health standpoint. One of the cases I'm somewhat familiar with was a woman named Lynn Conway. She was a very accomplished technologist, worked at IBM, and was part of the original IBM 360 series of machines. She was a man at that time, and she realized, this was in the 60s, that, it's now she, at the time it was he, realized that he wanted to convert to being a woman, and did so. And her book, Principles of VLSI Design, written with Caltech professor Carver Mead, is the Bible for electronic design at every university, pretty much. So, people go through these personal journeys, and you and I are in no position to say what they are doing is right or wrong. I think there's pretty much universal agreement that when it comes to minors, you don't want to sort of set them off on a trajectory that they may not fully understand. Minors' rights are, by definition, somewhat more conservative because we don't necessarily allow them to live on their own. Consuming drugs and alcohol and all that stuff is restricted. They're not allowed to vote until they're 18. So there's some legitimacy to saying, hey, there's got to be an age at which you don't just say, somebody woke up in the morning, saw a TV program and said, hey, I want to change my gender. But you have to allow for the possibility that functioning adults certainly may feel like for their own survival they need to change their gender. So, and there are people nowadays who don't really feel like they belong to either gender. These are social changes, that we have come to acknowledge more openly lately. This used to go on even in the olden days, but it was looked at differently. So the Democrats are more sympathetic. They're a more accepting party when it comes to people of color, when it comes to women, when it comes to people who are, the gay population, or for that matter, transgender people. They're more acknowledging of what people's rights are when it comes to living the way they want to. The Republicans and the traditional, white male, the traditional Christian, those communities, they don't have the same level of acceptance of these variations, and so that is going to play out in the political realm when if Donald Trump wins this time, and it's going to hurt a lot of people because the Supreme Court some years ago allowed gay marriage. And if that goes away, because the new Supreme Court is 6-3 conservative, just like they abolished the woman's right to choose and eliminated abortion rights at the national level, they may do that again when it comes to things like gay marriage, and that's going to affect a lot of people in this country.
So. Of course, you were speaking from the point of view of the Democrats and the Republicans. I wanted to ask, because there have been a lot of social media debates that have come, and there are people who espouse the costs of masculinity and other things. Is that an aspect as such that Trump gets in, and where Kamala Harris is seen as a less favored people? Because there have been suddenly champions of masculinity that appear on social media as opposition to the kind of liberalism on the gender front that has been spoken of. And these seem to be influencers who are able to, in fact, sway this conservative kind of voters towards a certain kind of an outcome or a certain kind of voting pattern. Do you see that working? Dr. Rajiv?
The choice between... Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can do it.
Yeah, I think you're asking, is gender a factor when it comes to choosing a president? Did I understand your question?
This question because there is this question about, how, especially in the last 7 to 8 months, a lot of these debates have, popped up. And, we are talking about how Generation Y thinks of these questions. Generation Z is thinking about these questions. The older generation, the X generation, the millennials, how are all of these generations thinking of when they choose a president? Because the president represents a certain kind of thought process, policies. So how does it come?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for better or worse, America is a male-dominated society. And so the perception is that women are not as strong, or maybe are not as mature or rational. I, of course, don't subscribe to that, but I think there's a segment of the population that does. And that does play into this. If you look at the data, if you look at the actual facts on the ground, you'd be hard-pressed to find somebody, like the general just said a while back, you'd be hard-pressed to find a lot of people who consider Trump to be a very rational person, which is kind of ironic because, he's very capricious in the way he makes decisions. He claims that he knows more about the military than military, generals do. and he thinks that he knows more about the economy than everybody else. The guy's declared bankruptcy 6 times, so clearly not an expert on managing business or understanding the economy. So he tends to be just sort of a macho bravado kind of a guy, and unfortunately, you go back historically and look at how America evolved. It was with cowboys with 6 guns and horses and all that, which all sort of feeds into this macho kind of mentality. So that is certainly a factor, unfortunately, in this country.
Listen to some of the Trump supporters and what they had to say.
Thought he would do better in Pennsylvania, but apparently not what they saw here. But like I say, it's still early, so hopefully he'll win enough to win the election. So
he did a great job. He was very fearless, and he took care of Pennsylvania. And you know what? And it's going to show. It's going to show. It's going to pay off tonight. That the people saw he almost got killed there. So it's very historical that he's going to flip that state.
Well, let us in fact also get in Ajit Jha, who in fact also joins us with it. Ajit, your first reaction to how it is panning out? Of course, as Rajiv was saying, initially it would have the red mirage, but now Harris is also winning some of the states. It's closing in. It's 214 and 179, and of course there are a lot of swing states on which we'll have to in fact rely on to see what the final outcome is going to be. Your reactions to the results coming in as of now, and if we are looking at any of the kind of presidencies that we're going to look at, of course, we see from an India-centric angle who's better for us and who is going to be much better for us. That would be the case that we are looking at. But America's engagement with India is going to be in the long term, because we've seen how the strategic situation around our borders are evolving and are also in the Asia-Pacific region. But again, India is known for its independent foreign policy, and that's been an irritant with whether it's a Democratic president or a Republican president, because certain things we have our independent line. So how do you see these, if possible, how it would play out in the presidency of Trump, or even if it is Harris?
Since the numbers are still coming, and the western states, the big, huge western states like California, which is obviously going Democratic, is still to come. So let me rest my judgment on, at this moment, who's winning. Obviously, Trump seems to have an advantage, but as the western state results will come, the picture will start changing. So let me actually answer the more interesting question that you asked. Who would be a better president for India, right? I'm assuming that's the question. And let's take President Trump. If Trump were to become the president, 2 scenarios, according to me. Whether Trump comes with a massive majority, almost like let's say what Ronald Reagan had, that kind of majority. And if the Senate goes completely red in favor of the Republicans, that is one scenario. The second scenario is that Trump wins just with a majority, simple majority, and the Senate is not clearly red. So I would argue the second scenario, which is just a majority for Trump, is better for India rather than if Trump were to get a landslide. With the reason being, if Trump gets a landslide, if you look at his campaign promises, he is going to raise tariff walls in a major way. Earlier he was saying 10%, now he's saying 20%. And sometimes he goes and gives, absolutely crazy figures for the tariff walls. That if he does, and especially if there is a majority in the Senate, which means everything he wants will get passed by the Congress, in that case I feel that India will suffer along with China and the other countries which are exporting in a major way. Let's take India-US bilaterals, right? we are actually, America is one of our largest partners. In fact, in comparison to China and let's say the Gulf countries, it's closer to, let's say, it's certainly much more than $100 billion. It's closer to 150 and things like that. It keeps changing the figures and the way you measure it. Now, in that, we have a major surplus right now, a trade surplus. Once the tariff walls come up, if Trump's what he wants is done, then India will suffer in terms of its exports. So I think it will hurt us. It will hurt China. It will hurt the other developing countries which are exporting to the US and which actually have, let's say, a surplus with the US. So that's clear. If Harris were to win, let's say, at this moment, it looks a little unlikely, but it's too early. If Harris were to win, she is not going to raise the tariff walls. That is quite clear from her campaign promises. So there, India stands to gain. Suppose Trump were to come with a less majority, just a simple majority, and the Senate doesn't go complete red, then even if he makes a lot of noise about raising the tariff walls, that may not be approved by, that may not be passed by the Congress. So that again will be more like, the huffing and the puffing by President Trump. But in terms of policy, there won't be a major change. So I feel from that perspective, India gains if Trump were to come with a slight majority or if Kamala Harris were to come in terms of trade. In terms of other issues, for example, I mean, if you remember, Harris, because her focus is human rights, so she might raise the issues of, let's say, Article 370 Kashmir, for example. In the past, at least, she had. I mean, now I doubt once she becomes a president, she'll obviously be more pragmatic. But she would raise issues like that, or this entire Sikh violence issue, which is becoming a big issue with Canada, even with the US. I think Harris would perhaps raise more than compared to President Trump. Trump is more a businessman, He simply wants, go ahead.
No, exactly. That is what I was, in fact, also trying to understand. In fact, I'll get Rajiv Mason also. Is Rajiv Mason, Sanjay Mason, you also, sorry for making wrong. You also said that when it comes to the issue of Trump, you said that he takes brash decisions. Is it because of his business background, where you have to advertise, you have to have that rhetoric that you can deliver, and you say that you've achieved, and therefore you stand on top of your so-called achievements, advertised achievements. And same thing is being brought to politics. Same thing being brought to foreign policy. I mean, how do you in fact see this kind of a behavior that is, embedded in a person who has been more of a businessman? So he's going to think in those terms of being a businessman. And of course, if we have seen his show Apprentice, he always comes with a dominating voice saying that I know better than you. That seems to be the way he's handled COVID as well when it came to the experts. The way he handled trade with Europe when the trade war was going with them. He seems to be saying that I know better than you people who are sitting in this room. And he's always, in fact, even chided people or his close advisors as well on such fronts. So what should we be actually prepared for if that is the same kind of a person we are going to see?
Yeah, absolutely. See, firstly, President Trump, I think I would put it very bluntly. The President of the United States of America has to be a very, very balanced personality, keeping your internal issues in mind and also the external issues, the existing geostrategic environment. Now, President Trump, rightfully said by both the panelists, he's got a business mind. But more than that, I think I'll agree with Dr. Rajiv. He is also cowboy type of a mentality. Just take out your gun and start shooting, that immediate action type. Now, these are okay for young people, but not for the President of the United States of America. You are the head of the state dealing with such sensitive issues, especially in the entire world. Now it is trade, defense, security, so many issues. The international, trade, etc. These are equally important. Logistics. So it's got large number of dimensions, not only business mind and the cowboy mind that one can function as a president. So what impact it will have on India? I definitely agree with the views of the previous panelist, especially as regards trade, but now coming on security and defense-related issues. See, if you just go back to the Galwan conflict, President Trump did not even condemn China for the Galwan conflict. The initiator was China. He did not condemn it. He only stated that both the countries should try to resolve it among themselves, and we are ready to mediate. Why didn't he condemn China? So this is what I'm trying to say. Whereas in case you see of the current administration, the Biden administration, I think security concept they have understood very, very well, especially in the Indo-Pacific region. That's a future flashpoint. West Asia and of course the Russia-Ukraine war continues. But the future flashpoint is going to be China, and the China has been making so much inroads into the entire Indo-Pacific area. It's also now seeking to improve its relation with the Pacific island countries. Of course, the entire South China Sea, it's doing a lot of activities, and especially against Taiwan. Now here, India is a very, very important player, and that is how Quad came into existence. Now, Quad is a very, very important aspect in which 4 countries are participants. And therefore, if you remember, even President Trump's time, there was a deal, I think, with the Australians for some submarines. I think that was also cancelled. Something
the nuclear submarine deal also did not, in fact, work out. I mean, they had a special within Quad. They had AUKUS, where they had only America, Australia, and the United Kingdom, in fact, involved, and that did not, in fact, work out.
So President Trump is quite unpredictable. As a military man, I will put it. Biden administration has been balanced. See relations with India. We had the GE F-414 engine transfer technology. We have got the MQB-9B drones. Then, the aspect of aircraft, C-17, C-30, all these aircrafts, Hercules, these Chinook Hepters, Apache Hepters, and we are having an excellent defense cooperation, logistics, MRO facilities. And these have been so well ironed out, so well checked out, it is to the advantage of both countries. So I would say today, India and United States are more of a strategic partner.
Right.
On equal footing. Now, President Trump, if he comes as the president, the lead is narrowing down. Let's see how it plays in the later half of the day. But if he becomes the president, I think for India also, we'll be dealing with a person who's unpredictable. And to deal with a person who's unpredictable is not easy. He will say something today. After 1 week, he will say something else. So he will keep changing because he is a one-man army who does not trust his even people. He feels he is in the know of everything. And I think the best example is his chief of staff, General Kelly, who gave a lot of correct statements just recently. So his inner circle people have also, come out with the reality.
They have also come out in the open, and they have also, in fact, spoken about how Trump is, or how he in fact tries to in fact make up his decisions. And of course, as Sanjay Mason was saying, it's a very, very responsible job being the American president, dealing with a lot of sensitive issues around the world, and its impact also that is felt not only for his country but around the world. Well, my colleague Karthikeya spoke to former assistant to the president for national security affairs, John Bolton. Let's in fact listen to it, and we will in fact get you more details as the day progresses on the US elections.
And when I say very special guest, yes, I'm talking about Ambassador John Bolton, the former National Security Advisor to the President Donald Trump. He served as United States Ambassador to the United Nations from 2005 to 2006. He has spent many years of his career in public service and held high-level positions in the administration of the Presidents Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, and George W. Bush, apart from writing a book which has been a bestseller. Thank you so much, sir, for joining me. And let me straight away ask you, sir, if Donald Trump, sir, comes back, will it change the shape of American foreign policy?
Well, it certainly will be a lot different from Joe Biden's foreign policy, and will differ from Kamala Harris, who I think will essentially be a continuation of Biden if she wins. But if the first term is any indication of how Trump will perform, his approach will be very erratic, hard to predict, episodic, transactional, not following a coherent strategy, and focused as much on trade and alleged problems in trading relationships as on bigger strategic questions.
How will this change impact India, in your opinion, sir?
Well, I think that Trump believes he has a very good personal relationship with Prime Minister Modi. I think they've demonstrated that. Really, it's very hard to tell, though, how Trump will approach India given the circumstances we face in the Indo-Pacific. Trump, during the campaign, has certainly been very critical of China, but it's not necessarily the case that once he's elected, that he'll continue along that route. If Xi Jinping calls him up the day after the election and says, "I'm so glad you won, Donald, Biden was a terrible president, he's made so many problems, but now you and I can get together and fix them," I think Trump will be tempted to follow that route. When we had meetings between the Prime Minister and the President, when I was National Security Advisor, to advance the Asian Security Quad, India, Japan, Australia, and the United States, the only thing we could get Trump to talk about was trade and his complaints about Indian discrimination against American products. I think that's almost certain to continue, notwithstanding that I believe the U.S.-India relationship overall, politically and economically, will be the most important of the 21st century.
So you said that this time the priority will be different in case Trump comes back to power. The world has changed in the last 24 months. You have an active theater in Ukraine and you have an active theater in West Asia, which is Gaza, Lebanon, and Yemen. What would be his approach in your assessment? Two active wars.
Well, he doesn't really know. I mean, these are important questions that you're raising. It is reported overnight. I mean, as we speak, the government of Ukraine is reporting that they engaged North Korean troops inside Russia in the Kursk province. This is the first time we've seen troops from Asia and Eastern Europe probably since Genghis Khan. And it shows the evolution of the China-Russia axis. It's certainly not perfectly formed yet, but they've got outriders like Iran and North Korea. So that means the conflict in Europe has really brought Asia directly in front of Europe and makes Ukraine, I think, that much more difficult to solve. In the Middle East, as you rightly say, this is a very serious situation, basically an assault by Iran on Israel, but through a strategy that could be applied to the Arab states as well. And we know China threatens now not just Taiwan in the East China Sea, but has recently made incursions in the Japanese airspace and the Japanese maritime domain. In the South China Sea, I think you're probably very familiar with, notwithstanding the recent agreement between India and China about the line of actual control between the two countries. I think there's a danger and risk all along China's periphery.
So there used to be an old saying that when American economy sneezes, the global economy catches pneumonia. So when the American state retracts from the global affairs, what happens, sir?
Well, I'm very worried that the chances for global anarchy increase. It's very helpful to the United States to have a strong international presence. International trade depends on a certain level of stability, and when the United States and its friends and all of us who believe in freedom of the seas and open markets, as we called it during the Trump administration, we want a free and open Indo-Pacific. If somebody isn't helping make that happen, it won't happen. And just as the most recent example, I think, of failure is we see the Houthis in Yemen have closed the Suez Canal Red Sea passage at the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. There's a direct impact on trade from Asia, East Asia, South Asia, through the Suez Canal into Europe. And we're not doing what we could do to stop the Houthis from closing the strait. I think it's a big mistake, but that, if you want to know what it looks like when America turns inward, what the Houthis are doing in Yemen, others can do the same thing elsewhere.
But then what happens to the allies, sir, who depend on the American support, their goodwill and activism?
Well, I'm very worried about that. I think it's a real possibility this time. If he's reelected, Trump will withdraw from NATO. It's possible that he will put great strains on the bilateral alliances with Japan and South Korea. He doesn't fully understand the concept of collective defense. He doesn't understand that America benefits from these alliances. Certainly our alliance partners benefit, but the U.S. benefits, and he doesn't understand that. He basically thinks we're providing defense for Europe, and they don't pay us enough for it. That's not the way it works. Certainly many of our allies could spend more on defense, but that doesn't mean that they're unworthy of being part of the alliance.
So what has been the single most issue that has dominated this US election? What is your assessment, sir?
Well, I think there are basically two or three issues that, from Trump's point of view anyway, are the dominant issues. One is the economy, the inflation caused during the Biden administration that hurts average Americans, working class Americans, by raising all of their prices for food and energy. Second is control over the border, the Mexican border, to prevent illegal immigrants from coming across, which was a problem not entirely solved during Trump's first term, but very substantially so, that Biden just opened up again. And I think crime is a problem, the threat of disorder in American cities. These are Trump's most effective issues. If he wins, he will believe he has a mandate on those issues. Kamala Harris is really talking about a completely different set of issues. If she wins, that's what she'll focus on. But the issues I've just enumerated are what Trump thinks are the priorities.
So generally people all across the world see Kamala Harris from the prism of Joe Biden. Do you think that she can depart from Biden's foreign policies?
Well, that's a question that we can't answer at this point, although I know everybody's asking it. My prediction, for what it's worth, would be, because she came into the vice presidency with very little foreign policy experience, what she has learned and the way problems have been analyzed, she's picked up essentially from sitting through National Security Council meetings, getting intelligence briefings, meeting with many foreign leaders. So based on what we know, I think the most likely direction would be, for a substantial period of time, a year and a half, her policy will look a lot like Biden's policy. But she will have her own team of advisors. The situation in the world will change. New threats and challenges will emerge. And she will get more comfortable making decisions involving key politico-military issues, so that, at some point her policy may diverge from Biden's. But, Biden's policy might have evolved too if he had gotten a second term.
So is America ready for a woman president, sir?
Yeah, I don't think this is really a hard question. I don't know whether Harris will win or Trump will win. I don't think anybody knows at the moment. But I think America was ready before this. I don't think Hillary Clinton lost because she was a woman. I think she lost because she offered very unappealing policies to people. And I don't think this will be another setback or anything that makes it look like a female couldn't win. Nikki Haley ran a very respectable campaign for the Republican nomination. She, like everybody else, was defeated by Trump, but it's only a matter of time when it happens now.
So a lot of people are amazed at the way the political middle ground in America has collapsed. What are your thoughts on that? Why has political middle ground collapsed in America, which has been the beacon of knowledge, technology, whether it's space, satellite, even humanities, but there is a collapse of a political middle ground. Why has that happened, sir, in the last 20 years?
Well, I think there has been a polarization in America, there's no doubt about it, but we've gone through this cycle on many occasions, and while the country is divided politically, this is nothing even vaguely approximating what happened in 1860-61 when a civil war broke out. We've had this polarization before. It's not pleasant, but we've gotten over it. Often it's because a crisis arises internationally that draws people together. I wish our politics were more civil. I wish we talked more about issues instead of personalities. But I don't think the situation is dire. It's not a great period, but we'll get through it.
And my last question to you, sir, what's your assessment? Is Harris on top?
I don't think anybody knows at this point. All of the projections and polls are done, and it's about as close to even as I think the statistics can indicate. I would just remind everybody, though, that even a small shift in the popular vote can have a big impact on the Electoral College. People talk about the 7 swing states. Harris could win all 7 by 1 percentage point, or Trump could win all 7 by 1 percentage point. What I do hope we have is a clear and quickly decided election, not to have it drag out like it did in 2020. I think that's better for the country, whichever candidate wins.
Thank you so much, sir, for joining me on our special broadcast. So the former National Security Advisor of America, Mr. Bolton, very candid, very candid on the American election. But he says that the worst has been witnessed in the past.
Are we ready to vote? Are we ready to win? Yes.
This one is a total stiff. You can't have her as your president.
The consequences of him ever being president again are brutally serious. Brutally serious.
You're a vice president. We will make America great again. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?
We are not going back. We're not going back. We're not going
You are watching News9 Live's non-stop coverage of the US elections. Hello and welcome. I am Krishna Kumar. It is the 60th US presidential election. Americans are deciding their 47th president and 50th vice president in a tight race, the tightest races ever, between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Of course, there is Tim Walz and JD Vance for the VP post as well. The results are rolling in as we speak, and early trends show that this is shaping up to be another nail-biter, with former President Donald Trump currently leading in 230 seats, while Kamala Harris in 187. The big news is that Kamala Harris has won in Washington and California. So far, Harris and Trump have secured their states that they're expected to win. Florida narrowly rejected a measure to overturn its 6-week abortion ban, while Trump won Florida. Harris has managed to win New York. Harris and Trump each need at least 270 electoral votes to win the presidency. Of the 7 swing states, Pennsylvania, Michigan and Wisconsin have been traditionally the strongholds of the Democratic Party, and these key states are seen as pivotal to the candidates' path to victory. Currently, Kamala Harris is ahead with about 68.5% of the votes counted in Pennsylvania, while Trump was cruising ahead in the state of Georgia. Donald Trump has claimed Kentucky, securing 8 electoral votes over there, continuing a Republican streak that has been unbroken since the year 1996. West Virginia also is red, with Trump winning. He has now added Oklahoma, Tennessee, Missouri, Alabama and Florida to his tally. Kamala Harris, meanwhile, has secured Vermont, bringing in 3 electoral votes from there, as expected from the reliably blue state. Harris has also claimed victories in Maryland and Massachusetts, further solidifying her lead in these traditional Democratic strongholds. We here at News9 are getting you non-stop updates of the results of the elections. Let's first listen into this conversation between our correspondent Shiv Kumar Sharma, who brings us this straight from Atlanta in the US.
Good evening, Himanshu ji. So, regarding this US elections, so what are your views?
Well, thank you, Shiv Kumar Sharma ji. So for my views is, so I work with a lot of Indian community around here, and Indian values match with the conservative values, which are like more Republican values, and we have a good, strong leader for the Republican candidates in our local races, like the John Speed that I belong to. We are right now in front of the victory party that's going on for all the state senators and the House reps and Congressmen in our area, and so far we're looking at every one of them. Everybody that we support is winning, and these are all Republican candidates, and hopefully Trump will also win.
Okay, so in the state of Georgia, is Trump is going to win, or in the entire country you're talking about?
In the state of Georgia, definitely Trump is going to win, because imagine just I'm being the founder of chairman of the UP Association of North America, and within just from UP Association we have around 30,000 votes among ourselves, and we have Indian votes are 1,27,000. So Trump lost by 11,000 votes last year, and this time there's a lot of energy between the Indian community voters. So I think we can easily be the swing voters and have to.
Meanwhile, India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar has spoken about the US elections at an event in Australia. Let's listen to what he had to say.
Probably starting from Obama, the US has become much more cautious about its global commitments. President Trump may be more articulate and expressive in that regard, but the reality is, after all, it was President Biden who, for example, withdrew from Afghanistan. It was President Obama who said that, he would be very cautious about committing American troops to any future conflicts. So I think it's also important to look at the US more nationally than just purely in terms of the ideology of the administration of the day.
And now joining us live in the broadcast is Swati Joshi, political activist and leader, TSB National Board, live from Dallas, Texas in the US. Thank you, Swati, for taking time out to be with us. We also have Gaurav Patankar, Managing Member and Chief Investment Officer, Mission One Investments LLC, live from New York. We also have Nirmal Abraham, political analyst and US expert, live from India's capital, New Delhi. Thank you, all of you, for taking time out to be with us. Let me begin with Swati. Swati, talk to us as we speak. Trump is surging ahead with 230 electoral votes. Kamala Harris lagging behind. How do you see this panning out? It was meant to be much closer than what the leads are showing at this point in time.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the electoral votes versus the raw numbers, you'll think that, right now Trump is surging ahead. But the electoral votes, what we're seeing right now is not unexpected. It's somewhat of a mirage, as they call it, that, he's getting all these votes from the red states and getting the electoral votes from the red states. But there's a lot more votes to be counted. And so, the game's not over. And it's going to take, it may not even happen tonight. It may go into tomorrow, which is Wednesday. And so, we're just waiting and watching and waiting for those votes to be counted. And I'm not at all surprised that at this moment in time, Trump has 230 electoral votes. Not surprised at all.
Surprised at all. Let me take this across to Gaurav Patankar, who joins us live from New York. Gaurav, talk to us. How is it going in New York? And did you also expect this initial surging lead by Trump?
No, I definitely concur with Swati's views that nothing unexpected has really happened so far. So I think this race is still quite close. My eyes are completely on Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. I think these are two very important battleground states, as one of your guests previously said. I think Georgia is pretty much seems to be going Trump's way, as is North Carolina. So I think some of the Sunbelt swing states could be close to being settled. Again, a little bit early, but I think when we think of Wisconsin, very close, Michigan, very close, Pennsylvania, very close, and a lot of votes that need to get counted. It's still the electoral math. There's nothing really earth-shattering or surprising that that has happened yet. But since you asked me a question about New York and New Jersey, I mean, I live in the state of New Jersey, and I'll tell you this, the results in New Jersey are much closer. It doesn't matter, it's still a solidly blue state, but the results are much closer than I've ever seen them. So clearly, Trump seems to be running a little hot in this area.
Okay, Trump seems to be running a little hot in New Jersey is the word coming in. We also have Girish Rajiv, global head at Takeda, Clinical Data Standards and Management of Data Systems, joining us. So we also have Gaurav Patankar. Gaurav, if I were to ask you, let me take this across to Nirmal Abraham as well. Nirmal, if I were to ask you, as Indians are watching this, it's like deja vu of what happened, with Trump last time around. A lot of expectations, but come election day morning, and it's Trump, Trump, Trump all over. That's what it looks like right now. But we have people from Texas and New York telling us that don't go by this. The game is far from over. Your thoughts?
So, the people have spoken. The American people have spoken. The expectation was very clear. The writing was on the wall. And the way the president was treated after the 2020 elections was absolutely unfair. It might actually remind us of some of the elections we have in some of the emerging markets. So from that perspective, I think the people have responded. This morning when I went to vote, I was stunned out of my wits. In the state of Pennsylvania, there was a 2-hour wait. So the Republican Party, the people who really feel for the country, they stood up, they came up to the booth, they voted. And I think, as you can see from the results, all these states, they're turning around. And it's really amazing to see how, the blue states are turning into red, and they're on their way to get there. I mean, right now I'm seeing Trump at 230 and Kamala at 192. That is absolutely stunning. And he might even be the first swing state turning around. And just to give you, oh my goodness, I'm just looking at the Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. He's leading. And interestingly, Minnesota just went back to being blue. The Kamala's VP candidate is from Minnesota. It was red until now. It just went back to being blue. So you can imagine the power and the impact that the people have felt, the American people have felt, and how it is turning around. And I must add this, there's a huge contribution from the Indian community to this, that what I've seen in the states like New Jersey and even New York, a lot of my Indian colleagues, and, I'm part of many of these Indian groups, a lot of them who were totally Democrat in 2000, during Hillary and Biden. This time around, they were totally for Trump. So we've come a long way. We've come around. We've been here for like 30, 40 years. And we are now making a significant dent on the American electorate.
Significant dent on the American electorate by the Indian community over there. Stay with us, Girish. Nirmal Abraham is also with us. Nirmal, as the election results in the US unfold, talk to us. 230 for Trump, 192 for Harris. A lot of surprises already and a lot of surprises in store as well, Nirmal.
I don't think the results have been surprising. The only thing that has been surprising has been the polls. I mean, consistently polls have been favoring Democrats for the last 16, 20 years, or God knows how long. But this time around, if you look at the popular vote, people were talking about Trump never going to get the popular vote. This time he's leading by around 60 lakhs. That's a huge number. I don't think Kamala would be able to surpass that. And the interesting state here is Michigan, because Michigan generally is blue, except for 2 occasions when Trump turned it around. In 2016 was one. So why is Michigan important? Is because a lot of the Muslim population, a large proportion of Muslim population is in Michigan. There's around 2 lakh. But when the Israel-Gaza war happened, we often talked about Kamala Harris losing either Muslim votes or Jewish votes. But interestingly, what has happened is she has lost both Jewish votes and Muslim votes. So in the last election, 2020, Joe Biden had 77% of Jewish votes. But this time around, the projection shows that Kamala Harris only has 60% Jewish votes. As far as Muslims are concerned, if you may have noticed, a couple of weeks back in Michigan, there was, Muslim religious leaders and imams came up on stage with Trump and said that we Muslims should unite and vote for Trump. So either what's going to happen is Muslims are not going to turn up to vote for Kamala, or some of them are going to vote for Trump, in which case Michigan is going to be advantage Trump. The other state that I was a little bit concerned about as far as the Trump camp is concerned is North Carolina, but luckily he has won that. Nevada, if he gets, I think, 3 more swing states, I think, preferably Georgia is leading right now, he could get it. Michigan and maybe even Nevada. That could probably end the election. But Pennsylvania and the other states, there's a lot more to be counted. It's interesting to see how it goes. So it is still very tight, although I would say at the moment it is advantage Trump. The other thing with with a state like Michigan is the unions. I mean, a lot of the unions consistently for the last 50, 60 years has been on the Democratic side. But this time around, if you notice, the Border Patrol Union and a few other unions have actually turned towards Trump, which could also be advantages for Trump. But otherwise, I think it is still a very, very tight contest. But if you ask me who's got a better chance of winning, at the moment, I would say Trump.
Trump has better chances. Let me take this back to Swati Joshi. Swati, as we speak, the fresh leads have come in. Kamala Harris now leading or has 205 electoral votes as compared to Donald Trump's 230. That lead is narrowing.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned before, it's going to continue to do so. We have more votes that need to be counted, and it's not over, not game over at all. I just, I think that it's going to take longer than tonight. We're going to be, waiting for the results to be final. Every single vote needs to be counted, and that's what's going to happen. I know that, people are saying Donald Trump is winning, but maybe he is in the electoral for now, but it's not over.
And your thoughts on the swing states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, traditionally Democratic strongholds, but for now, it's Trump who's cruising ahead in a state like Georgia. Harris is ahead in Pennsylvania. A lot is going to depend upon which way the swing states go. If Kamala Harris is wants to catch up with the lead and beat Trump and get to 270.
Yeah, I mean, this happened in 2020. Georgia, we had a runoff for the Senate. We had to, it all came to 10,000 or 11,000 votes, I think, in Georgia. So, and then I'm looking at the map right now, but it's going to be the swing states. Those are going to be the decision makers. That's been the case all along. When we tuned into the TV or read some article, that's what people were saying all along. And so I'm not surprised at all. I'm waiting for the counts to come in Pennsylvania, Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan, Nevada, and Arizona as well. So there's still some more states left to be counted, some more votes to be counted, and some states to be declared. The electoral votes declared given to either Harris or Trump. So we just need to wait and see. I don't think that we should be making any kind of victory speeches at this point. We still have time.
Okay. We're just trying to get a head start in terms of understanding the final results. That's what we're trying to do over here. Gaurav Patankar, it's from 190 odd, it's now 205 to 230. I mean, are you getting that sense that there's going to be a deja vu of the George Bush, Al Gore elections of the year 2000?
No, look, I think both Girish and Nirmal laid out a very good case for why there seems to be momentum going in one direction. But as a markets guy, I look at various data points. I'm looking at what Bitcoin's doing. I'm looking at how the stock futures are trading. A lot of those data points clearly seem to be pointing, just as we speak right now, in the direction of what both Girish and Nirmal were saying. Also, the other data point that I'm looking at is the congressional races and the Senate races. No major breakthroughs on the Senate side yet, but in the congressional races, the Republicans are running pretty strong. So I think as we all kind of perhaps agreed to more broadly, I think one or two of the swing states would have to decisively break. And by decisively break, you mean all the votes, including mail-in ballots and many other things. I mean, in Milwaukee, for example, there was a malfunction of an electoral counting machine or something of that nature. I mean, it seems to be a not very serious issue, but they need to fix certain things and count 31,000 votes, which wouldn't come until midnight. So till all of that is done, and a couple of these swing states, one of the Rust Belt states decisively break, particularly Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, or even Michigan, as I pointed to, I think will not really have a very clear picture. But it definitely looks one way at this point.
Okay, stay with us, Swati, Girish, Gaurav and Nirmal. Stay with us. We are taking a very short breather over here. We'll be back with our live coverage of the US elections in just a jiffy. Keep it with News9 Live.
Are we ready to vote? Are we ready to win?
This one is a total stiff. You can't have her as your president.
The consequences of him ever being president again are brutally serious. Brutally serious.
You're a vice president. We will make America great again. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?
We are not going back. We're not going back. We're not going
back. The next Indian icons, beating everyone on the globe, B6E and XEV9E. Mahindra's electric origin SUVs. Catch them at Unlimit India. The next Indian icons, beating everyone on the globe, B6E and XEV9E. Mahindra's electric origin SUVs. Catch them at Unlimit India.